The Joe Rogan Experience.
During my day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
All right, we're rolling. Good to see you, sir. Here we go. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I wanted to play this, but we decided we shouldn't play it because it could get copyright strike, and we don't want to get the episode. We don't want anybody to have any sort of way to get it down.
Sure.
But it was the episode of you when you were on The View, and I think it was 2015 or 2006, like when you were running for president.
Right.
And you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. They all loved you. They were all talking about how you're, you might be conservative in your financial positions, but you're very liberal socially. They were talking about you as such a favorable light. The audience was cheering. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
Yeah.
But there's probably no one in history that I've ever seen that's been attacked the way you've been attacked, and the way they've done it, so coordinated and systematically. When you see those same people in the past, very favorable to you, like Oprah, when you were on Oprah's show,
very.
she was encouraging you.
Last week I did one of her last shows. I think maybe Thursday or Friday. It was a big deal being on Oprah's show, the last one, and I was like one of the last shows in that final week. And I said, "Boy, we've come a long way since that."
What was it like?
Well, the concept, it was really like two different lives. You know, I had a very wonderful life, but I wanted to do this. The Apprentice was still going very strong. We had 12 seasons, and we had actually 14 seasons, 12 years. We had a couple
Well,
of
they
them.
canceled The Apprentice when you were running for president, correct?
No, they had Arnold Schwarzenegger do it. I was involved in that, and I had enough of it, and we did great. It was doing great, but they wanted me to stay. They all came to see me. They said, "We're going to give you a contract." They wanted to extend my contract. Mark Burnett is a great guy. Then they wanted to extend the contract. Mark said, "You're crazy. Don't run. No. Nobody gives up prime time," they said. You know, it's one of those little things, which is probably true.
Nobody gives
for
up
the
prime
most-
time, though, for being president?
For running against 20 some odd people, you know, turned out to be 18 professional people, you know, mostly politicians. They said, "Who would do this?" I mean, it's a long shot. Actually, the heads of NBC came over, Paul Telegny, all the top people came over to see me, try and talk me out of it because they wanted to have me extend. The Apprentice was doing well. So it was 14 seasons. It was 12 years. We had 2 seasons where we had a double, which rarely happens. It was just a hot show. And I said, you know, I want to do this. What happened is previously, like 4 years before that, they did a poll. They had Mitt Romney, and somehow they put me in a poll. And I blew everybody away. I blew him away, which isn't that hard, frankly. But I blew everybody away, and I said, that's interesting, because I never really gave it that much real thought. I thought about it, but never real thought. But I saw these polls were very good. And so I was thinking about doing it then, but I had a contract with The Apprentice. Plus, I was building 2 big buildings at the time, and I wanted to make sure they got finished up properly. And it was one of those things. The kids were just sort of getting involved. They're very capable kids, but they were getting involved early on. So I did that. I got them done. I had some very good successes. And I came on, and then I thought about it for the next one after the Romney disaster. And I ran and I won against Hillary. And it was quite an experience, but it was a different life because you're right, The View. I was on The View many, many times, and they loved me.
Just the way people would talk. I mean, even if people had criticisms about you, people that didn't like you, there was always feuds and stuff like that. But the reality was, the thing turned on you when they found out that you were going to be president. It was very coordinated. And some people are catching on to that now. There's a lot of people that were longtime Democrats, like Elon and Bill Ackman, and all these different, very intelligent people.
And they support me now. Bill Ackman supports me. He's very supportive. Yeah.
This is what I wanted to ask you. What was it like when you actually got in? Because nobody really can prepare you for that. When you're running for president, you don't really know what it's going to be like when you actually get into office. What did you think it was going to be like?
In office or when I decided to run?
No, when you got in.
When I was in. So when I was in and won and was in the White House, essentially.
Yes.
Well, first of all, it was very surreal. You know, it's very interesting. When I got shot, it wasn't surreal. That should have been surreal. When I was laying on the ground, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew exactly where I was hit. They were saying you were hit all over the place because there was so much blood from the ear. You would know that better than anyone. When they get the ear torn
Ears
up,
bleed a lot. Yeah.
Anyway, so and I was thinking the other day. When that happened, I really knew where I was. I knew exactly what happened. I said I wasn't hit anywhere. With the presidency, it was a very surreal experience, okay?
Like, what's day one like? You win,
yeah.
You get inaugurated, holy shit, I'm the president.
Yeah, that's what happened. So I'm driving down Pennsylvania Avenue. I just built a building on Pennsylvania, the hotel, the old post office it was. We called it Trump National Hotel. And we sold it to the Waldorf Astoria. And it was a wonderful thing, but I'm driving down, I'm passing the hotel. You've never seen so many motorcycles, police, military. You know, it was a major thing. I got off, really the first time I used Air Force One, landed, and we're coming down, and it was very beautiful. I mean, it was incredible. And we're going down Pennsylvania Avenue in the opposite direction. You know, normally you're used to going one way, and all of a sudden you're going the other way. The street was loaded up, and I wanted to go out, and I wanted to wave to everybody, but that wasn't smart. You know, that gets a little bit dangerous, right? I mean, when you watch, like, Kennedy and some others, right? But I really felt, I don't know, the love was so crazy, and so I did get out of the car for a brief, just for a very short walk. I thought it was very important to do, and Melania got out with a beautiful dress on that became sort of a staple. It was, people loved it, and Barron, and we're walking down the street. But where it really got amazing, we get to the White House, and now it's a little bit before dark, beautiful. And we went up to the president's quarters. They call them the presidential quarters. And I'm standing in this beautiful hallway. It's funny, nobody ever talks about the White House as being beautiful inside. You think it's going to be, everything's going to be all metal doors and stuff. It's not. It's so beautiful. I made my money largely on luxury. The hallway is like 25 feet wide. The ceiling heights are, it's so beautiful. But I was standing there, and I said to the guys, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom. I had never seen the Lincoln bedroom. I'd heard about the Lincoln bedroom. And I was standing with my wife. I said, do you believe it? This is the Lincoln bedroom. I mean, it was like, it was amazing. Because look, if you love the country, but here, the Lincoln bedroom, and the bed, he was very tall. He was 6'6", which then would be like Barron.
Right.
Would be like Barron Trump. He's 6'9", but 6'6". He was very tall. Then on top of that,
There it is.
He wore that. Yeah, there it is. It's a long bed, elongated bed, and because people were shorter than you see, some of the chairs are very, very low to the ground actually, but he had the long bed, and they had you had the Gettysburg Address right on that, right under that. You can't see it here, but right there, the original version of the Gettysburg Address, and this is the original. And I'm looking, and I just looked around. I said, "Do you believe this?" Because I was never first of all, even if you were a politician, but I was never a politician. I sort of just started, right? And all of a sudden I'm standing in the White House. And it was very, very surreal. That room was so beautiful to me, much more beautiful than it actually is. To me, when I looked at the bed, and the bed you could see was a little bit longer, had to be a little bit longer. He lost his son, and the two of them suffered from melancholia. They didn't call it depression. They called it melancholia, and they suffered from it. He was a very depressed guy, and she was a very depressed woman, more so than him. And on top of that, they lost their son, whose name was Ted. And it was just seeing it in the little pictures, a little tiny picture. I mean, you can't see the details there. Little tiny, everything the way it was, a little tiny picture of Ted, who he lost, and it was devastating. And he was, he was in a war. He was having a hard time because he couldn't beat Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee won like 13 battles in a row, and he was getting like a phobia, like a fighter. Not about the fight stuff, but like I went to a UFC fight, and it was a champion who was 14-1 about a year ago. You would know the names. 14-1, and the only guy he lost to was this one guy, but the guy that he was fighting was like almost just an average fighter. Lost numerous times, but he beat this one guy. So I said, okay,
I really don't know who you're talking about.
I will figure it out.
Okay.
But about a year ago. But the point is that he lost. He wasn't nearly the fighter, but the one who was not nearly the fighter had beaten. He's the only guy that beat the champ like 5 years before. And I said, I'll take the guy that won the other fight. And that's what happened. He beat him a second time.
Sometimes it's
Lincoln,
psychological advantage.
What is this crazy thing? Lincoln had I don't know, I've never read this. I heard it from people in the White House who really understand what was going on with the whole life of the White House. But Lincoln had the yips about, in a way, as the golfers would say. He had a phobia about Robert E. Lee. He said, I can't beat Robert, because Robert E. Lee won many battles in a row. He was just beating the hell out of him. They tried to get Robert E. Lee to be on the North, but he said, no, I have to be with my state. The state was his whole thing, and he went to the South. And he was, I've had generals tell me, we have some great generals, the real generals, not the ones you see on television, the ones that beat ISIS with me. We defeated ISIS in record time. It was supposed to take years, and we did it in a matter of weeks. These are great generals. These are tough guys. These are not woke guys. But their favorite general, in terms of genius, was Robert E. Lee.
In terms of strategy, you mean?
Strategically. He took a war that should have been over in a few days, and it was, years of hell, of vicious war. And so here I am standing there, and again, I had never really done this before. I ran a number of months before I won. Probably, I guess if you figure max it out, it would be a year, something like that. So I had never run for office. And I did well. I mean, I went into debates. We had 18 people, including me, and then slowly but surely they started to disappear. We had debates, good debates.
Everyone's aware of all this stuff. What I want to get to is, what was the experience once you got inside? What did you think it was going to be like in terms of, your ability to govern? Yeah. This is your first experience governing anything. You've never been a governor, you've never been a mayor.
Private stuff.
Business.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden, you're inside the White House.
The biggest thing was just that first moment of being in this really hallowed place to me. It was surreal. It was beyond. To me, that was the experience. It was a surreal experience. And then, with time, that wears off. With time, it becomes, your place where you stay. And, I was doing a lot of, I had two things that I really focused on: governing the country and survival. Because from the moment I won, before I got to office, all of a sudden, they came down. Nobody has ever been treated that way. And you see that. You see where in the Washington Post very early on they said, well, now the impeachment stuff starts. And it did. It literally started from the beginning. So I had survival and run the nation. I had a combination. Most people don't have the survival. They get in.
What did you expect, though, in terms of, once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people?
Yeah.
How many appointments did you have to make?
Well, you have actually 10,000 appointments. Now, they're different. You have big ones, and then they appoint 100 people and 200 people. But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments. So you'll appoint a Secretary of State, and he or she will appoint a lot of people. So it's a lot. But in terms of major ones, you probably have 100, but they're big ones. Treasury, state, military.
And how did you know who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no experience.
So
I was there 17 times in Washington, and I never stayed over. According to the press, which I think is probably right, over the years, I was only there 17 times. I never stayed over. So now I'm sitting there, I'm saying, this place is gorgeous, but, I don't know anybody. It's like you go to certain areas, and other areas, they may be great. Washington was great. Washington's not so great right now. We got to fix it. We're going to make it better. It's a very dangerous place, very badly maintained place. We're going to make it great. We're going to make it better. We're going to bring it back. But I wasn't a Washington guy. I was a New York guy. I was a New York builder, and I built buildings in New York, and I knew that whole world, but I didn't know the Washington world too well. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to be appointing top people. So,
what did you think it was going to be like? Versus, like, did you have any ideas of what it was going to be like, and what was different?
well, I was always involved in politics, but usually from the standpoint of a donor. I was a donor. I was a big donor. I gave money to politicians. I enjoyed politics.
Mostly Democrats, right?
Both, really, pretty much both. I have actually pictures of Ronald Reagan when I was very young.
You were a Democrat until, like, what year?
I was a Democrat. I could get you the exact, but the early 90s, I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't because it's very hard. It's a two-party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK Jr., and so do I. He's a fantastic guy.
I do, but I thought that being an independent was nonsense.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work because even if you do great, you're not going to get Congress. In other words,
Right.
you need now to say, okay, now I'll get half of Congress. They're never going to vote for you. So even if you got there, which is very hard, and I know how you feel about Bobby, and I feel the same way, and he's now with us. But it doesn't. It's pure and simple. It's a two-party system.
Right.
And somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody spent $250 million trying to get the nomination as a Reform Party candidate or whatever, and they got just nowhere. You get eaten. You just get eaten. The system eats you alive.
Right.
So it was really somebody that not only was new to Washington, but was new to politics. So in the office of the presidency, over the years, all those presidents, you've had 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. General Eisenhower, General Washington, right? General George Washington, you had generals. So it's 8% no admirals, 8% generals, and 92% politicians. They're politicians and they go on. So they never had a business guy, or they never had a guy that wasn't elected to an office. They were all like Ronald Reagan he was a movie actor, and but he became the governor of California for, I think, 2 terms, and then he ran. So you never had a thing like this. But in terms of me, and sometimes I'd use it as an excuse, and I don't like having excuses actually, but I'd use it as an excuse. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well because I didn't
No shit, Trump. No shit.
know them that well. Some of those people I campaigned against because, when you have 18 people, we had mostly politicians running in the election, running in the primaries, and they got knocked out one by one, but I got to like some of them. Some of them I didn't like at all, and I don't like them now. And I'd rely on them, and I'd rely on other people. So all of a sudden, people would come in, I'd like to recommend so-and-so to be Secretary of State, and I'd have 3-4 people recommend. One thing I can tell you is everybody wants the position.
Of course.
No, but sometimes I'll hear, a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with, etc. Let me tell you, everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
Now, they don't want to be known. I mean, there's a particular guy in New York, primarily, very big, very successful, very strong, very political, although he's not a politician. He'd give anything to be Secretary of State, but if they ask him, no, I don't think I would do it. But in the meantime, begging for it, okay, begging. They all,
I believe you.
Everybody wants it.
But what
No
I
matter,
want to
and
get
by the way,
to-
no matter what you do, but it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about
Right.
where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up, and you hear things that you say, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people. And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system.
And they're stiffs in many cases. They're
Stiffs.
stiffs. They're survivors. I find that,
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say
a
stiffs?
stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or they're smart and survive. One little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license. But it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy and helped him and everything else. And I went to him, I said, I'd like to have your help. And he said, let me take a look at it. I said, ooh, that's not too good, but I really hope you can help. Anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, you are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, etc. But it was controversial. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And, there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You have
A
all the
survivor.
scandals. And I realized he was a survivor.
And so they never do anything controversial. They never take any chances or speak their opinion that's outside of it.
Yeah. Sometimes. And yet I don't disrespect him for it.
So-
I actually respected the guy more in a certain way. I said,
'Cause he did survive.
You know what? He's been there like for 28 years, and he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is.
So you're in there. You have 10,000 appointments you have to make. So you're getting advice from people. And at one point in time, did you have a moment in time where you realized these are bad choices? Like some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh, yeah. I think so. The one question that you'll ask me, that I think you'll ask me, that people seem to ask, and I always come up with the same answer. The one mistake, because I had a lot of success, great economy, great everything. Everything was great. The military, we rebuilt it, biggest tax cuts in history, all this stuff. We had a great presidency. 3 Supreme Court justices. Most people get none. You pick them young. This way they're there for 50 years, right? So,
Right.
Even if a president is there for 8 years, oftentimes they never have a chance. I had 3. It was sort of the luck of the draw. But I will say that it always comes back to the same answer. the biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
Neocons?
yeah, neocons, or bad people, or just loyal people, or
People that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people
people
got bad
that,
advice.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're reading about him a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who's a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. You know John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton. He's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? Good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now, he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. It always works out bad with that guy." And I said, "Oh, man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here." And he was right. But he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh, man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East. They should have never done it. I used to say it as a civilian. So I always got more publicity than other people. And it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I can definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe. Maybe
You said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out, you do these huge events, and you're just talking. And we've highlighted you on the show many times where you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand-up. It's funny stuff. But it's like and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have, like, comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, you'd be in jail. Like, that's great time. But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like, no one had done that. And I think...
it's funny. You need at least the attitude of a comedian when you're doing this business. This is a very dangerous business. It's a very tough business.
It's the most dangerous
business.
business.
Well, for a job?
Yes. I mean, other than going to war and being a firefighter or being a cop, it's the most dangerous business.
It's the most dangerous. But being president is the most dangerous.
Especially you. I mean, you haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts. And they've brushed those out of the news like it was nothing.
Yeah, they'd rather not talk about it.
Imagine if there was assassination attempts on Biden, how hard people would be attacking the right. How they would be trying to get guns taken away from people. They would try to ramp up gun laws. They would try to figure out some way to blame you. If there was attacks if Biden got shot in the ear, we would have never heard the end of it.
But I think he's in good shape because it's only consequential presidents. If you take a look at what's happened, look, I'm for having countries pay us billions and billions and trillions even dollars. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. Nobody took in 10 cents, not one other president. I do things that make it, that don't necessarily make me so popular. I just do what's right. And when you do that, you're more, look at Iran. We would have never had the attack on Israel at all. Iran was broke. I told China, if you buy, you can't do business in the United States under any circumstance. We're going to go cold turkey with China. Some people think that would have been a good idea anyway. But if you buy any oil, 1 barrel of oil from them, you're not doing business. And I said that to many countries. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money. But I make myself, I understand what I'm doing. You make yourself a target, and it's a very dangerous business. But if you just look at statistically, so I sort of think, I don't know if it's right, but 1/10% for a race car driver. Yeah, it's pretty dangerous business, right?
Yeah.
1/10% for a bull rider. I tell you, to me, these guys that ride the bulls is worse than UFC. It's worse.
Yeah.
These guys, you see these big monster bulls, and you see it in slow motion where the foot is like, an inch away from the head if it hits him, the guy's gone. But they die, they die.
So 1/10 of 1% die, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 1/10 of 1% die.
Right.
And they certainly get hurt badly. Really, they can't walk after a certain period of time. But as a president, if you look at
the amount of assassination attempts.
And attempts, too.
Yeah.
And attempts. No, it's a very dangerous position. I never thought of that, by the way, when I did it. You don't tend to...
Did you just assume because people loved you on The Apprentice, they were going to love you as a president?
I think it would be so easy. It's
well,
very
it probably would have been if the media didn't attack you the way they did. If they didn't conflate you with Hitler. I mean, even today, like, Kamala was talking about you and Hitler. They're going to take what you said about Robert E. Lee. Oh, Donald Trump wishes the South won.
That's right. He loves Robert E. Lee.
They love to take things out of context and distort things.
But they don't even have to take them out. They make them up entirely. Okay,
they do that, too.
But, it's interesting when you mentioned I was very popular, and all those people loved me. I mean, some of these women, they're so stupid. And Joy, she would, every time she'd see me, I'd be in the theater or something, she'd, come on, let's go.
She loved you.
She loved me.
That episode, where
By the way,
people
Whoopi,
should watch that episode just to see what we're talking about. Like I said, we don't want to get a copyright strike, so we're not going to put it up. But if you watch the episode, it's bananas. It's like an alternative universe. And it's only
but Whoopi
9 years ago.
Whoopi
loved you. Gives you a hug and a kiss.
And how about that other one, the new one on there, the one from my administration? She writes me a letter, you're the greatest president. She leaves. You know, she worked as an assistant press secretary. I hardly knew her. But she leaves and she writes me this gorgeous letter. What's her name? She was, I don't even know, you know, anyway, she was in the administration. She's on now currently. Sits in the far right-hand side, whatever the hell her name is. And she writes a letter, the most beautiful letter. She's quoted in the paper. He's a consequential, he was the greatest president, blah, blah, blah. Then all of a sudden she goes in the View. She started hitting the hell out of me because they won't hire her unless. I've had many people go on CNN and they call and say, I don't know what to do. Well, they want to pay me a lot, but I have to be negative on you. I said, be negative, that's okay. There are guys on like CNN, they won't hire them. Sean Duffy is a congressman and he retired. He got a good job with CNN, but he was only positive about Trump. So they kept him, but they would never put him on. I mean, I respect what he did. He could have gone, negative. I tell people, go negative. Let my friends make money.
Well,
it's just so crooked. The press is so crooked.
It's crooked, but it's also they're diminishing themselves. They're killing all their credibility, and it's opening up the credibility to new media. It's opening up the credibility to independent media. All these.
The worst I've ever seen, though, and I've seen the worst. I mean, I've been a part of it. I've seen the worst. Kamala goes on 60 Minutes, gave an answer that a child wouldn't give. It was so bad, and 60 Minutes took the answer out. They took the whole, and they put another answer in.
They edited it deceptively,
which didn't make sense either, but it was better. They took it wasn't editing, it was fraud. This was not editing.
Right.
Editing is where I'll give an answer and they'll take a couple of words and change them around, or they might even take a sentence or two off, which is very bad. But it's sort of bad. I'd give an answer which was a very good answer. I always talk about, I like to give long the weave. I like to
you like to weave things in.
But when you do the weaves, and you have to be very smart to do weave. When you do the weave, look at this, just in this one thing, we're talking about little pieces over here, but it always ends up. No, it comes back home.
Yeah.
For the right people, for the wrong people, it doesn't come back home, and they end up in the wilderness, right? but they can take my answer, and you know what? They may take a little piece of it out or something, and they use the term, yes, we want to save time. Well, it's not. But I've never heard. I think it's the biggest scandal in broadcast history. What happened to CBS? So you have CBS 60 Minutes. It's a news program. It's not an entertainment program. It's under their news. It's the head of their news thing. She gives an answer to this that shows that she's essentially incompetent. And they took the answer. Could you imagine them doing that?
We can show it if you want people to see it. Can we show it? No?
Sure.
We get in trouble. We'll get copyright strike. Okay.
I'll indemnify it.
But it's drastic. But
They shouldn't. If they are able to strike something out of existence that was premiered on a government program that is actual 1984, there's no world where they should be allowed to get away with that. But who knows? Shut your ass up, Rana. Chilling, song scene, by damage is fucking obscene. Ding chilling, on ting, my damage is very obscene. Ding chilling, chilling, ding chilling, ding 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 chilling, ding ting, it's my thing, yes indeed. Ding 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 ding.
what was interesting was the other full version was available initially. It was like a preview.
Somebody made a big mistake.
Somebody put that preview out
Some
there.
kid put the preview out.
Exactly.
And then the bosses did this or that, and then all of a sudden they said, we got a problem.
Exactly. And then
They got caught by mistake.
Well,
But don't you think that's a bit, to me, and don't forget, this is election interference and fraud. And it's 60 Minutes, it's their news division, so
a big deal.
They give those licenses out, for free. They should pay for it. They're worth a fortune. They give them out for free because they're using the public airwaves. With cable, you don't have that. Cable's different. But, it's just a different deal. But with the networks, they give those licenses. They're worth billions of dollars. They give them out free, but you have to be honest and all. That was bad. I think that David Muir and that woman that was aside, I never even heard of her, but they kept interrupting me. It was like, I said, how many people am I debating here? I got this one and I got you two. But he went after me 11 different times. It's interesting. I always thought he was a nice guy, but he's just like the rest of them,
Well, that's his job, unfortunately, and I'm sure
but
what they
wrong.
want. You're right. Well, the problem was they fact-checked you and they didn't fact-check her. And
Not
one of the
at
most
all.
egregious examples of that was when she said that there are no troops right now deployed in war zones. There's a very famous viral video that went online of troops in a war zone saying, well, what the fuck are we then? Because there's thousands of them. Dan Crenshaw, the congressman, posted on his Instagram all of the various examples of
Too many.
Did I see the SFO video that he made on the 2020 election fraud without addressing the Hunter Biden story? I did not, Stickman. But Dev does what Dev does. And of course, hello, bolster.
Troops that are deployed, thousands and thousands of troops that are currently deployed.
Stupidly deployed.
But the point is, if this is going to be an actual real debate and not a propaganda exercise, if it's going to be a real debate, you have to fact check everybody.
So
Like if someone says maybe she
to...
thought there was snow,
Right.
which is also a problem. So it's one of two things. It's either it was not true, it was a lie on purpose, which is terrible, or it was the opposite. It was ignorance, which is also terrible.
Well, Joe, when I said crime is soaring, he said, no, crime has gone down. I said, where did you hear that one? Crime has gone down. I mean, I'm debating with this guy, but I've had that.
Well, there was amended FBI statistics that came out after that showed that crime had gone up substantially.
And by the way, the statistics were a fraud, because when they put out the statistics, they didn't include some of the worst places. They didn't include some of the worst cities, some of the most deadly places. But when the real numbers came out, I turned out to be right. But I haven't.
You turned out to be right, but then there's another problem. Unreported crime is way up. Because people have lost. Look, the morale that the police department has in a lot of these cities where they've done this defund the police bullshit.
Right.
The morale of these poor cops, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest idea
So
of all
bad,
time.
so
But
bad.
what they've done is they've made these cops feel terrible. They're like good cops. I think cops are just like everybody else. Most of them are great. It's like everybody else. But if you run into one carpenter and he does a shitty job in your house,
Right.
you say carpenters fucking suck. But they don't suck. Most of them are great. And
Police
that's the key
have
thing with cops. But the point is like they did all of these things in this very foolish way.
Right.
And these cops are suffering the consequences of it. And so subsequently what happens is a lot of crime is unreported. A lot of crime, like you call the cops, they're too busy, they can't even get to you. Oh, your house got broken into? Sorry. You know, it doesn't even make a report. There's a lot
When seconds matter, they're minutes away.
You can always tell a black
of people that they just give up.
It's so sad what's happened. And I'll tell you what, I go to police funerals, and we went to one in Long Island. I visited the family in Long Island. Very big deal. It's so dangerous. People don't realize. The car, dark windows, pull over. He's a gentleman. Please pull over. Door opens. Guy comes out firing. Even if they were allowed to pull out their gun, which they're not, they can't, pull
Do
out
it in time. Yeah.
They still wouldn't have time.
It's every cop's worst nightmare.
They opened a door, and he was killed, and his partner was hurt. He was killed, and you don't even have an eighth of a second to think. And it is such a dangerous job. That in particular, think of it. You go up to a car, you don't know who's sitting there with a gun, and if they have a gun, you really don't have a chance. You're not allowed to have your gun out, by the way. They have very strict rules. So number one, but even if you could have your gun out, the door opens and bullets start firing out. And especially where they have the dark windows, where they have the darkened windows, it is such a dangerous profession, and it's very hard to get cops now because they're not given any backup. And you're right. They have like an eighth of a second to make a decision that's going to change their life. If they make the wrong decision, they're going to end up on the front page of every newspaper in the country, and they're going to lose their house and their pension and their job, and their wife is going to be gone, and everything's going to be gone.
And here's another thing that people don't talk about. How many of them have PTSD? Probably most of them.
Yeah,
these guys are seeing people shot all the time.
Yep.
I've talked to a ton of cops about it, and a lot of cops commit suicide. A lot of cops are deeply depressed.
But we have to give them back their dignity. We just have to give it back. You said it so good. You never hear anybody say that. You're never going to have it perfect. You're going to have a bad apple.
In everything, in every profession.
But every time there's a bad apple, that gets massive publicity, and it taints everybody else.
But it's also this very irresponsible thing where people say defund the police, get rid of the police. Even Kamala Harris was a part of that. It's a very stupid way to look at it. What you should do is fund the police. You should have better training. You should have cops that feel more appreciated. You should have something that helps mitigate this PTSD that all of them suffer through.
Right. She was a big part of defund the police. That was a big thing for her. Defund the police. Always defund the police.
Well, it's a political idea,
but
right?
Anybody with that political thought, I don't think should be running for president. And I think people are getting wise to it. We're doing pretty well now. I don't know. Maybe in a week from now, say, sorry about that, I was wrong, but we're leading everything. And I think we're going to have a very good election. But I tell people, because people are starting to get to know her. But she was defund the police. She was all these transgender operations. If you wanted a sex change and you were in detention and you demanded a sex change, they would give you a sex change.
Well, the wildest one is this idea of giving free sex change to illegal immigrants.
That's right. In detention.
That is the wildest thing. Is that the biggest problem you have?
Yeah.
You just walked here for Guatemala. You need to become a girl.
But she was in favor of it.
Yes.
So think of it. She changed. She changed 15 policies. In fact, I'm going to send her a MAGA cap.
She stole your idea about no tax for tips.
I came up with this idea that honestly nobody ever heard of. And now it took her 2 months, but you know what? All of a sudden,
Well, it caught fire.
and she just put it into a little speech.
Yeah,
Well,
it became
but
popular.
I think we still have that issue. I think that issue is a good one for it. But no, we have a lot of good issues. We had the other day. Think of how simple some of these things are. We're trying to get cars built in the United States. Detroit has been really tough. It's been a disaster. They have a huge factory, a huge car auto plant being built by China in Mexico. Make cars, sell them in the United States, put everybody out of business. Right, here we go again. I said, if that plant is there when I'm president, I will put 100 or 200% tariffs on every car. They'll be unsaleable in the United States. And they just announced they're not going to build a plant because they think I'm going to win. Think of it. They're not going to build a plant. This was the biggest plant in the world. It would have more than all of Michigan makes. So that's how big. This is what we're getting to. And I said, if that plan goes up, I want them to understand if I win, I'm going to tax those cars at the rate of 100 or 200% apiece so that you won't be able to sell them in the United States. They just announced they're not going to build a plant.
Yeah, I read this.
I did a big favor for our country by doing that. And I'm not even there yet. To me, the most beautiful word, and I've said this for the last couple of weeks, in the dictionary today, is the word tariff. It's more beautiful than love. It's more beautiful than anything. It's the most beautiful word. this country can become rich with the proper use of tariffs. It'll
Did
keep
you just float out the idea of getting rid of income taxes and replacing it with tariffs?
Well, okay.
Were you serious about that?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Because ready? Our country was the richest relatively in the 1880s and 1890s. A president who was assassinated named McKinley. He was the tariff king. He spoke beautifully of tariffs. His language was really beautiful. We will not allow the enemy to come in and take our jobs and take our factories and take our workers and take our families unless they pay a big price. And the big price is tariffs. And he'd speak like that, but he was right. And then around in the early 1900s, they switched over stupidly to, frankly, an income tax. And you know why? Because countries were putting a lot of pressure on America. You don't want to pay tariffs. Please don't. You know, believe me, they control our politicians. If you look at the kind of numbers that these guys make then and now. But we had a commission meeting in the...
That's a bold statement, Trump, but okay. We will let you cook on that one.
I think it was 1887. Think of this problem. We were so rich. We had so much money. We didn't know what to do, so they set up a blue ribbon commission on tariffs. And the sole purpose is what to do with all the money we had. We were so rich because we were taxing other people for coming in and taking our jobs. And China does it. That's what China did. If you want to open a factory and sell cars, if you build a factory here, have a factory, they don't take our cars. They wouldn't take our cars. But if you build a plant in China, you can do that. Elon did that. By the way, Elon is great. That guy is such a great guy. I think you're a fan of Elon. He is from a different planet. He's the greatest guy. That rocket coming in. Yeah. I told the story once or twice, so you may have heard it, because these speeches have been good. Did you see the one last night?
Yeah.
29,000 people. That was it.
Yeah.
And the one the night before
That's
was the same thing. We are rocking and rolling. But Elon, I'm talking to this very important guy. I said, wait a minute, I'm looking at something. The television's unmuted, right? And I see this rocket. It's all brown from the heat. You know, it's like 10,000 degrees pouring down at thousands of miles an hour. And I see this thing. You know, it's like a 20-story building.
And it catches.
And I say to this guy's an important guy. Wait a minute. Let me just put you down. Hold it. I got to see this. And I see this, and it's going to crash. I say, it's going to crash into the gantry. They call it a gantry. I said, oh, man, that's going to be a disaster, because it's starting to get very close. And then all of a sudden, you see the flames in the bottom, and it boom, and then you see the two arms grab it.
Crazy.
And I forgot the guy. I had him on the phone. I forgot. No, I said, the hell with it. No, I called Elon. I said, was that you? He said, that was me. And I said, who else can do that? He said, nobody. Russia can't do it. The United States, nobody can do it. You know, I set up Space Force. That was me. And that's the first time in 82 years that we opened another branch since the Air Force. And that's going to be one of our most important things. But think of what Elon does. And he did one of...
Do I think the Freaks content worth watching? That is a question that belongs to be answered by the people who watch it. Occasionally there are videos that I will watch. I don't watch his content religiously. I don't watch any of the content of my friends religiously. But there are times where, when we're working on things, we will cross over with each other, and I will look at stuff. And I will ask them if I can look at what they're doing, especially if it happens to be for the purposes of something that we both have research into. For example, there was an off day where I asked Aiden for some research because I was looking into shit that happened to deal with what she just dropped a video on. So, ultimately, yes, but that's another day, Johnny. So, ultimately, anything that any mutual of mine does, or any friend of mine does, I will probably look at it, but I don't watch it religiously like I probably would have if I was the kind of person I was in high school. I do not religiously consume the content. And when it comes to dev stuff, if he puts out a video that's a banger that I can collaborate with, okay. If he puts out something that I probably highly disagree with, I probably won't criticize it in my work, not because, you're covering for your friend Carl, as I've been accused of in the past, which goes all the way back to when Dev decided to cut Aiden out of his friend group for reasons which, after experiencing the particular audience that he dislikes, I don't understand it for her, but I can definitely understand it for the other. I probably wouldn't cover it on camera simply because if I were to want to talk about it, I'd want to talk to him about it live on air as I'm watching it. So, short answer, he probably does. He should probably get to work on the trucker video, if he hasn't put it out yet, which I'm likely thinking he hasn't. The gaming streams are more than fine. Naomi and Dave are fun people to talk to and hang out with. The majority of people that have come from his audience are fun and to hang out with. Many of them are insightful, especially people like Avalon Apple. I would say there's more in the audience of Dev than necessarily Dev himself, but that's not to take credit away from Dev at all. That's not my personal opinion. It's just my professional opinion. Anyways.
Another thing that I never heard of it's Starlink. I went down to North Carolina, Georgia, the different places. I followed it right down, and they had no communication. The poles were all knocked down. Everything. And one of the guys in North Carolina said, "Could you do me a favor? Do you know Elon Musk?" Yes. He endorsed me. By the way, he gave me the nicest endorsement too. The tougher. He said, "The country's going to fail. You should do the same thing, Joe, because you cannot be voting for Kamala. Kamala, you're not a Kamala person. I know you. I've watched you. I know him better than he is. You know what? Without speaking to you, I think I know you maybe almost as well as your wife. I have watched you for so many years. You're not a Kamala person. You're a Khabib person, but you're not a Kamala person. Nobody's going to know who Khabib is, but
they know
he was not bad, right? That guy.
Oh, he was phenomenal.
But that's your kind of
Your
person.
weave is getting wide. We're getting wide with
my
this
weave.
weave.
But isn't
I want to bring it back to tariffs.
But wait one second before we finish with tariffs. So they said, could you get him? We need Starlink. And I called Elon. He got it for him so fast, saved so many lives. And I said, how was it? They said, better than the wires. You know, they couldn't put them in. They were all gone. So
I used it recently in Utah in the mountains.
Did you find it good?
Oh, it's phenomenal. It's the size of an iPad. You just set it down on the ground. You get high-speed internet. It's incredible.
We're spending, just to show you, we're spending $1 trillion to get cables all over the country, right? Up to upstate areas where you have like 2 farms and they're spending millions of dollars to have
Well, talk about the $42 billion
nothing.
that was wasted on this internet access program. They didn't get anybody access to internet.
They haven't hooked up one person
Not
yet.
one person. They spent $42 billion. They could have gotten Starlinks to everybody with that kind of money.
For almost nothing.
Yeah.
For a monthly charge.
And it would have been incredible. And it's high-speed internet everywhere you want to go.
And he wanted to do that.
And he wanted to do it.
How about this? They built the charger stations, right? In the Midwest. They built 8 of them. They cost $9 billion. That's like a gas pump, right? They built 9 gas pumps, except electricity comes out. They spent $9 billion. 3 of them don't work. The whole thing. There's so much waste. I could sit here and tell you about things that there's so much waste, abuse, and fraud.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I think everybody's aware of that.
Let's get back to tariffs.
When you're talking about one of the criticisms of your administration was with tax cuts and with tariffs, you increased the deficit. So. What was the strategy behind that? And did you think it was going to increase the deficit?
I find it interesting how, despite people's assumptions of you gotta pin down the yapper, because if you let the yapper yap, the yapper's just gonna yap, and you just can't let liars lie. It doesn't seem to work with Trump. It seems that he's more than happy to talk to Joe Rogan. It appears that it's possible that when you try to stop Trump from speaking, it seems to not be because Trump wants to avoid questions, it's because he wants to talk about details and examples and offhands and segues. Interesting. I wonder who Kamal is going to demand to be interviewed by.
A substantial amount?
Okay, we were ready to rock. It was all, I had a bad system. We had a horrible tax policy. I made it great, with a much lower tax rate. So I took it from almost 40% down to 21%. Now I'm bringing it from 21 down to 15, but only if you make your product in the United States, which is great. People call me, they said, what a great idea. Nobody ever heard of that before. I don't care if they make the product in Japan. Why should I give them? So it's at 21. That, at 21, in the first year, we took in much more revenue than we did at almost 40. Think of that. It inspired. Now we had other things too. We were able to get people to bring back their money. You couldn't bring back your money if you had money in Europe, like Apple. Apple had many billions of dollars outside. They couldn't bring it. There was no way to bring it back in. The bureaucracy, the documents, the whole thing, and also the tax was too high. They wanted like half of it or something. Nobody's going to do that. So they leave their money in Japan and they spend their money there. That was part of what I did. The money came pouring back in. Apple took in hundreds of billions of dollars. They brought it back from overseas. They brought it in.
So how did the deficit increase?
So what happened is we were ready to rock and roll, and then we had the COVID thing, and we had to focus on that. And if we didn't give some businesses a hand, you would have had a depression like in 1929. But we were ready to start. We would have very shortly been paying off debt. We have $35 trillion in debt. And I'll never forget it. It was talking about from the standpoint of being in office. I'm in the Oval Office, and I have John McLaughlin and Fabrizio. They're 2 very good pollsters, probably, I don't know, I would say the 2 best, who knows, but very good pollsters. And we're starting to think about running for a second term. And we had the greatest economy in history. Never has there been an economy like.
And you attribute that to lowering taxes and tariffs?
2 things. And also I cut regulations more than anybody else. And if I asked many of the businessmen, from the big companies, the guys running the big companies, I'd say, so if you had your choice, you've had it now for a long time, what's more important to you, the tax cuts, you paid less tax, or the regulation cuts? Every one of them said the regulation cuts meant more. Who would think that, right? Because you don't equate it to dollars, but it actually is more dollars. We had it going, and then we just had to focus on something else. But they were sitting there, these two pollsters were sitting there, and they said, sir, if George Washington came back and Abraham Lincoln was his VP, as opposed to Waltz, how bad is he, by the way? But if Abraham Lincoln was his VP, they couldn't beat you. And I'll never forget it. The following day, They said, something's happening in China, sir. Could we meet? I said, what's happening? People are dying. And it was all around the Wuhan lab, by the way. There are pictures with little lines, their body bags, all around the Wuhan lab. And I always said that from the beginning, Joe. Was, they tried to say, first they said it was France, and they blamed everybody.
Right.
But then they say it was bats from a cave 2,000 miles away. So we got hit with that. And despite that, we had the best economy. And when I gave it over, the stock market was higher than it was pre-COVID. I mean, nobody could even believe it. But we saved it, and we were helping businesses. They were dying.
So it's your belief that if you had a second term, given the policies in place, the way the economy was booming, that you would have been able to pay off a lot of the debt, and that was the strategy.
If we didn't have COVID, we would have been paying off debt, and we would have had. And don't forget, by growth, the word growth is actually more important in a way, because you could have the same debt, but if you double your growth, all of a sudden you're under-levered. But still, we should pay off debt. If you view this $35 trillion right now, it's a lot. But if you look at the asset value, if you look at it purely as an asset value, we have oil underground, we have water, we have mountains, the assets are so enormous. But regardless of that, we've got $35 trillion in debt, we should pay it off. And we would have started paying off debt and probably even given further tax reductions. I want to get it down to 15%. We're going to do more business. But when you get hit with a COVID, everything stops, and you have to keep these businesses alive. The businesses were dying. I mean, they were just dying. This country was going to die.
Are there influences outside of environmental that keep people from wanting to drill for oil and frack and do those sort of things, outside of the environmental concerns, which are legitimate, of course?
No,
but are there other influences that maybe over-accentuate or over-exaggerate these environmental effects? Are people being influenced in a way where they're trying to keep us from producing American oil?
Yeah. So the environmental is the biggest tool for stopping growth, the biggest tool. The other is regulation. And if you speak to Elon, he said the regulation now to send a rocket up to anywhere, even if you do everything, it's becoming impossible. But they use environmental in order to get people not to do anything. And sometimes I say, I look at some of I know the environmental stuff better because I had to build buildings in New York. I had to do environmental impact studies. And I would see some of these guys that I'd hire for a lot of money, environmentalists that would get you through the process. And they'd be up in Albany, that's the capital of New York, and they're up there trying to make it tougher for guys like me that were builders because they'd get paid more money. In other words, I had one guy, highly recommended, I was good at getting permits. I was one of the kings I was always very good. But the environmental stuff was always horrible. They could slow a project down 10 years, 15 years. I had a project in Louisiana, built big LNG plant. It was for 14 years. It was going to cost $18 billion, one of the biggest, like the Empire State Building, laying down on its side times 4. Massive on the coast, on the Gulf Coast. And they said, sir, they're going to give it up. I said, they shouldn't give it up. What's the problem? They can't get their environmental. They had environmental permits that would fill this whole room up to the ceiling. And they said there was one mistake on one little line. They wanted to do it all over again. It's not going to happen. And I got them their permit instantly. And they built the plant. It's massive.
So when you're saying that, there's people that are making money by making it difficult.
Yeah.
Are you talking about lawyers?
No, I'm talking about environmental consultants and lawyers.
Environmental consultants profit off of dragging out the process.
Absolutely.
And how do they profit? How do they profit?
And I probably do the same thing.
Because they can be able to lock up your bill and stop you from doing shit and make underhanded deals. Now, everyone has to ask that, but that's why corruption stems from the local and then filters up into the federal. Underhanded deals that are done at your local homeowners associating meeting is going to directly affect the people who are able to buy things, people who are able to invest in things, and people who are able to make better choices for their outcomes in life based on whether or not they or someone else that they know can be able to make those deals and do that business with or without someone else's investment and involvement. So then it just fucks everything up. Even on the business side of, well, this is going to cost you a lot of money, they can just do it for dollars on the pennies. You've heard of pennies on the dollar. Wait until you hear of dollars on the pennies, where I charge you $10 to do something that would have cost you 10 cents.
Thing about with them, to be honest with you. I want to be honest with you.
How do they do that? How do they make it?
Let's say New York, they go to Albany.
Okay.
And they convince people that if you have a certain type of plant on the ground that's this big, in theory valueless, that it's a rare plant, and you cannot even touch it. You can't go near it. You can't put a building on it. You can't do anything. Or there's a little puddle, and they call it a lake, and you have to go by the standards of a lake. I said, no, that's a puddle. Oh, you have no idea. Guys are filling a little puddle. You have no idea what they do. And they use it as a way to stop you.
They use it as a way to stop you, and also as a way to generate money. I'm curious how they generate money that way, though.
Well, they get fees.
They get fees.
Massive fees.
And
Just
people rely on them.
Tell him.
Experts because
let him know.
People that they go to when they have to run these studies in the first place.
But some of them are just bad guys, and they're trying to make it more and more difficult.
And they have a lot of power.
Yeah, I think they maybe had more. They didn't have as much with me because I would get through them, and I understood it. Look, I've done so many they call it environmental impact studies. I did so much to build a building. To build a building in New York is very tough. You got to be very. You got to deal with. Think of it: financing, unions, all the municipal stuff, environmental. Of all of it, to me, the toughest thing was the environmental. because they could stop you cold with the environmental impact study stuff. And you hire a so-called expert. They say, sir, he's the one guy who can get you through the morass. It's a morass. It's horrible. They use it as a weapon. They use it all over the country.
Right, but there are legitimate concerns about environmental
There
impact,
are,
correct?
there
Like,
are,
look about the BP oil spill. There's a lot of things that do happen that are environmentally devastating,
yeah.
and you want to mitigate that as much as possible.
You do. Look, I had, during our 4 years, we had the cleanest air and the cleanest water. I view it differently. I say air and water. Remember this. It costs much more to do things environmentally clean. China doesn't do anything.
Right.
When Kerry goes to see President Xi of China, which he probably doesn't even get to see him, but they look at him, oh, yes, we will do, oh, yes, we're going to do that, no more coal, and then they approve 58 coal plants for the next, they build a coal plant a week. Okay?
They build a lot of coal plants.
But let me just say, though, so here we are cleaning and scrubbing everything, and everything's got to, the air's got to be pure. But in 3.8 days, that stuff floated over China is right over the top of us.
Right.
Same thing with the oceans. They dump their garbage into the Pacific Ocean. If you take a little cork and put it there, in about a week and a half, it'll be in front of Los Angeles. We're picking up their garbage. So nobody ever talks about that. But in a way, the bigger one is even the air. It's the currents. It's an amazing thing. It's been flowing that way for 1 million years, or long before.
We
long
share
before
air with
we
the
were
whole
there.
world. Yeah.
No, if we're
We get the
cleaning,
Sahara dust clouds over here.
Absolutely.
We get dust clouds in Austin from the Sahara Desert.
but we get the China, they call it the China curse. We get the China curse. They're bad, and their air is dirty. When I went there, I had a great relationship with President Xi. And they treated me better than anybody's ever been treated. Same thing with Saudi Arabia, a number of them. But they laid it out. And I said, this air is good. Do you know they closed every factory 1 week before I got there from within 200 miles?
That's like what Gavin Newsom did when Xi Jinping came to San Francisco.
He cleaned it up.
He cleaned it up. He got rid of all
Isn't
the
that
homeless
terrible
people.
in a way? To think, he cleaned it up and then it became a pigsty.
Well, the
He
dumbest
is-
thing is he said when your friends come by, when you have visitors, you clean up your house. Like, how about just keep your fucking house clean?
Can you imagine?
It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody say ever as a governor as to excuse to why you finally cleaned up your homeless problem.
And the day he left,
Right back to
it
it.
went right back.
Oh, yeah.
But in a way, that was a bad thing that he did because he showed
Showed it could be done.
what a disgrace that
Yeah.
was. What a disgrace.
Well, this is the thing that shows you how foolish a lot of these people that are running these cities think. And a lot of these people that are running these states think. It's foolish. Like you're insulting the intelligence of the people that live in that city that are impacted by these people just camping and needles and human feces. There's an app that you can buy. There's an app that you can get rather that will show you where the human feces has been documented in San Francisco. It's a poo app, and it's just everywhere. It's just bum crap everywhere.
But let me give you one that you may not know.
Okay.
Which I think you know everything actually, as a student of yours. but water. In Los Angeles, you can't get proper amounts of water.
Right.
And it's unbelievably expensive. And you might have a house in Beverly Hills, and they're actually thinking about rationing water. Can you believe it?
I can believe
And
it.
I was in the farm court country with some of the congressmen. We're driving up Iowa, and I say, how come all this land is so barren? It's farmland, and it looked terrible. It was just brown and bad. I said, but there's always that little corner that's so green and beautiful. They said, we have no water. I said, do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. I said, why do you have no water? Because the water isn't allowed to flow down. It's got a natural flow from Canada all the way up north, more water than they could ever use. And in order to protect a tiny little fish, the water up north gets routed into the Pacific Ocean. Millions and millions of gallons of water gets poured. You got to see this. We're driving up, and I had never seen it before. It's like Iowa. It's the most fertile land. Iowa's blessed with great land. Idaho for a potato, right?
Yeah.
But they're just, by the way, some land is good for a potato, some land is good for corn. It's the craziest thing. I love the farmers. They're great. They're the greatest. And by the way, they're getting killed right now.
They are.
They're getting killed because of the stupid administration. But so I see this, and I said, you got to be kidding. I said, you mean you have water? And I looked at it. It's like a valve in your sink, except it's massive. The thing's 5 times taller than your ceiling.
Did you know the center of California was a giant lake?
They have so much water.
You ever see what it looks like before
No,
they
I
rerouted
never
it?
saw that,
The
no.
center of California, was it 200 years ago? How long ago did they do that, Jamie? The center of California had a fucking enormous lake in the middle of
So
California.
they dumped it into the Pacific.
Who knows what they did? But whatever foolishness that they did led to the situation that they're in now.
Think of those dry forests that burn.
That would be the eucalyptus trade. All that water either was redirected into another reservoir or another delta, or it was stupidly and foolishly used in such a way to try to use it for the eucalyptus deal with Australia, where they gave them eucalyptus trees and they said it was going to be nice fertile land, and then they never cleaned the underbrush, and the underbrush caught fire, and now you have droughts in a place that should be very, 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 very fertile. Not even counting for what's on the ocean side.
Burned down all over. The head of Austria said,
Here it is, Tulare Lake, or Tachi Lake. It's a freshwater lake in the southern San Joaquin Valley, United States. Historically, Tulare Lake was one of the largest freshwater lakes west of the Mississippi. Show a photo of what it looked like back then.
that's a great
So
system.
that's what it looked like. Look at that image. Now, go to the one on the third from the right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Oh,
was an
wow.
enormous
What a
lake
beautiful
in the
thing.
middle of California. Imagine
That'd
that.
be much more valuable
How
property.
crazy is that?
Oh,
How
wow.
crazy is
So
that's
what
what it
did
used to
they
look
do?
like? And human beings screwed that
No,
up.
they let it go into the Pacific, and then they.
I don't know what they did. What did they do? How did it go
Wow.
missing?
Yeah, they drained it.
1983. Oh my God. Oh, went dry a handful of times. Well, lakes do go dry, but that's a big one.
But think of
It's a
it.
big one to go
You
dry.
could have all of the water you need. All of that land would have more water. The whole thing could be like that little patch.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd say I was with Devin Nunes, a congressman, and other congressmen. We were growing up. I was visiting that because they asked me to go up and visit their territory, and I did. But I kept saying, look at this land. It's beautiful, but it's so dry. And I thought they were going through like a desert, like a drought. They said, no, we have water, but it gets... So I looked into it.
What is the
And I
fish?
got it done. I could have water for all of that land, water for your forests. You know, your forests are dry as a bone.
Yeah,
Okay?
dangerous.
That water could be routed. You know, you could have everything. Oh, not only dangerous, billions of dollars a year they spend on forest fires. And you know, there's a case with the environment. They're not allowed to rake their forests because they're not allowed to touch it. When a tree falls down, after 18 months it becomes very dry. It's like, you know, like real firewood is bad. You know, a tree that's up, these are all things I learned the hard way, the easy way. But when a tree is up, it sucks water, it's wet. I went to they had a couple of horrible forest fires in California, and I said, you know, you had a lot of trees standing. Yes, they were healthy trees, sir. I said, with this intense heat, that you could see they were charred a little bit on the bottom, but they were going to be all right because they're soaking wet because they suck up the water, right? But when they fall,
Right.
they're like, you know, it's like lighting a match.
Yeah.
And you got to be able to clean, they call it maintain your forest. So I was
Yeah.
with the head of Austria. He said, you know, it's a shame. I see all those forest fires in California, and all they have to do is clean their forest, meaning rake it up, get rid of the leaves, get rid of, you know, leaves that are sitting there for 5 years. And
We'll certainly get rid of the dead fall.
and get rid of the trees that are falling,
Yeah.
that, you know, are like, so many things.
And making
By the way,
crushed.
Could you
I
really
had
rake
it
the
all
whole
done.
forest, though? I don't think you
No,
can
I
rake the
have
whole
one
forest.
more.
I think you get rid of the dead fall, but raking all
You
the
could
leaves.
certainly get rid of the dead, okay?
Yeah, I think that's the real issue
You know,
with the dead fall.
environmentally, they don't want to do that. They said, you know, it's got to be nature and all this stuff. But in the meantime, this is exactly
Yeah.
right. But you could have, so it was the Department of Commerce that needed the approvals, but Gavin Newsom had to sign them. I got it all done. Nobody could believe it. It was all done. I said, I got it. You got so much water. All you have to do is sign. And that guy didn't want to sign.
Did he not want to sign because that would be a political victory for you?
I think no, he didn't. No, I don't think so. He used to say he's a great president, and we got along. We did. We actually got along at that point. But I think somebody said you just can't continue to call him a great president. You know, they do say that. But we had it all done. He didn't sign, and then we got on to other things. And every time I go to California, I said, "You have so much water." They don't know it. I'm telling you, people living in Beverly Hills, they turn off the water. Same thing with the electric. They want to go to all electric cars, but they have brownouts every weekend. You know.
Well, right after they made the announcement that as of 2035, you're not going to be able to buy an internal combustion engine in California,
Yeah.
like within a month, they had some announcement asking people to not charge their Teslas. Because the grid couldn't handle it. Well, how are you
I
going
will,
to
I
handle
will
it?
terminate the mandate immediately. Just a
Good,
mandate.
thank you.
That will be done, I would say, in my first day, maybe 2 days, because, you know.
Let me ask you about nuclear. One of the things that when I've talked to people that have a real understanding of nuclear power, what their position is, it's probably the cleanest, safest form of electricity that we can generate. And that the
Because it is.
fears of nuclear power are really about a few disasters, the Fukushima,
Yes, things that happen because of failures and man-made mistakes where people decided they were going to slack the fuck off and also not pay attention.
Island. These are old systems, and that they're much more capable now, and they're capable of making even better systems. But it's a difficult political issue because you think nuclear power, you think Chernobyl. That's what everybody does. They have this connection. They have the potential
Or
disaster.
Fukushima, which
Or
is
Fukushima.
where you're not supposed to enter the land for 3,000 years or something.
It's
crazy.
I think it's worse than that. I think that area is like going to be radioactive for probably longer than you can imagine. But the point is, they're better at it now,
Right.
and that they can do it now, and you can generate power in a way that you don't have to worry about these. One of the most ridiculous things is electric cars being powered by coal-fired plants. It's a ridiculous thing.
So what's happening?
Yeah, that is what's happening.
what's happening.
And people want to think they're being green, but it's
Well, you look at the way the batteries are made. But here's the other thing. We don't have, well, we do actually. It's being held. We have certain areas where we have great raw earth material, and we're not allowed to use it because of the environment. And we have areas in California that have incredible raw earth, and they're not allowing, and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to let them use it.
But how do you do that?
China.
How do you do that and protect the environment?
Because the environment's going to be protected. You can do it. You can make a lake out of it. Okay, we'll put back a lake. I mean, something nice about lakes. You can do things magnificently.
You just have to do it carefully and
you have to do-
responsibly.
Absolutely, you have to do it carefully. But the problem, China has all of those areas, most of those areas, and yet when they say go electric with the cars, China's going to be the one that gives us the cars. All of those guys in Detroit are going to be out of business. You're going to make your electric cars over there. We have a thing called gasoline, and we have more oil and gas under our feet than any other nation. I had in Alaska, there's a find. It's called Anwar. I got it approved. Reagan couldn't get it. Nobody could get it. I got it all done. It was amazing. They were getting ready to start drilling. The equivalent, they think, of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest finds in the world. It was all set to go. And Biden comes in. One of his first orders were, we're not going to use it. It would have been so good for them. We could have supplied all of Asia with oil and gas.
What was the negative?
And you talk
of it?
about money?
Right.
The negative was politically they didn't think it was good for them. That's all.
That's all it was. So you don't think that it's environmentally
No,
dangerous?
Taking it from way down deep in the earth, environmentally would have been fine.
So it can be done responsibly.
Absolutely. Oh, otherwise,
we're
let's not
protecting the
do it.
environment.
Well, I think windmills. Okay, so they talk about
Good
windmills. I think windmills are really disruptive. When you talk about the environment, they kill the birds. You want to see a bird cemetery? Go under a windmill someday that hasn't been cleaned out with all the bird carcasses. It's
Yeah.
like massive amounts of
Well, they're
birds.
also a massive eyesore. I went to
But
a
they're
ranch in
horrible.
South Texas. We had to drive past this enormous windmill farm, and it's gross. It's dystopian. You're looking in the left and the right, all you see is these big spinning machines that aren't even that effective at generating electricity.
Correct. Most expensive form of electricity is a windmill. and then they start to rust and rot.
And you have to
then they
replace
get
them?
abandoned by the people that built them.
Well,
Because
you have to get rid of all that material too. When you replace those blades, now you have a problem because you have
Can't
to
bury 'em.
dispose.
Yeah.
Right, you have to dispose these enormous windmills. And how
By
do
the way,
you
they
dispose
say
of
you
them?
can't bury them. So I even question that, but I'm not going to get into it. But they say you can't bury the blades. So you have the blades, and you can't bury the blades. You can bury the blades. It's not going to matter. You can bury. You'll find areas you can bury. But they come up. This is what I mean. They come up with this. But the environmentalist dream is windmills are going. You know what happens to them? After 5 years, they start to rot. After 10 years, you have to replace them. Did you ever look at certain parts of California where they have heavy windmills and they've been abandoned, and they're all different manufacturers and all different companies, and they all.
haven't seen that.
It is the ugliest thing. It looks like a graveyard almost, a graveyard of windmills.
It's pollution.
It's so bad.
It's
and in
no
the
more,
oceans.
it's no different than leaving garbage on the ground.
How about in New Jersey, off the coast of New Jersey, they want to build. The people are going crazy not to build them, but we have them. The whales are washing up on shore.
Right.
So in 50 years, they had one whale come ashore. Now they had like 18 come in the last year.
What is happening with the whales? I've read about this.
Well, they say that the wind drives them crazy. You know, it's a vibration because you have those. You know,
Right.
those things are 50-story buildings. Some of them.
Right, and they're
50.
super sensitive to vibrations
They have
and
those.
sounds.
You know, the wind is rushing. The things are blowing. It's a vibration, and it makes noise. You know what it is? I want to be a whale psychiatrist. It drives the whales freaking crazy, and
Yes.
something happens with them. But for whatever reason, they're getting washed up on shore, and you know, and yet the environmentalists
Conveniently ignored by the
yeah, but the
environmental people.
environmentalists they don't talk about it.
Right.
I think there's nothing uglier. I see it in Scotland. I see it all over the world. You have this beautiful valley. It's been there for in civilization thousands of years, but millions of years, and all of a sudden you have these ugly windmills up.
Would your
and the
plan to be
environment-
replace that with nuclear? What would you do?
Well, nuclear is bad. I mean, I think there's a little danger in nuclear, but you know, we had some really bad nuclear. They did one in Alabama. They did one in I think South Carolina. They do them wrong. They build these massive things. Then the environmentalists get in. I don't want to go into a long story because it's too long for the show. This show is too valuable to talk about concrete. But they have hardened concrete. It's number 12 concrete. It's the hardest. It's harder than steel. It's incredible. They put up a wall, and an inspector comes along and goes, nope, you're a quarter of an inch. The wall might be 8 feet wide. You're a quarter of an inch too short. I'm sorry. You got to rip down the wall. Because it's got to be poured contiguously, right? You're 1/4 of an inch. I'm sorry. Rip down. You can't rip it down. This stuff you can't put a hammer through it. You can't. It's incredible. Concrete technology is unbelievable. What's happened? You think of concrete.
So you think that's an example of overregulation?
Yeah,
Pointless
well, you have an
overregulation.
inspector that comes along and he says, take down a $25 bazillion wall. These things ended up costing $25 billion. And one of them never got open. But here's the story. So France does it. France is largely nuclear. And they build small, little, compact plants. And if they need more, they build the same thing and they hook it up. And they hook it up because they get too big and too complex and too expensive. And it is very clean. They say it's absolutely... You know, my uncle, I had a great uncle who was a great genius, just like other members of my family. But he was a professor at MIT for, I think, 41 years. He was the longest. When I was in the White House, the head of MIT, Princeton, and Harvard came down to meet me. And the MIT person said, I have a book on your uncle, Dr. John Trump. He was our longest-serving professor. He was a great genius, sir. Do you know how? And he knew everything about nuclear, from math to chemistry to nuclear. He knew it. And he said, someday it's going to be the way to go, but the problem is it's so dangerous in terms of war. He said,
Right.
Donald, someday, this was a long time, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump, he said, someday you'll have a little satchel at your side and you'll go into a building and you'll be able to blow up New York City. I said, Uncle John, that'll never happen. He's right. You know, he's right.
Well, that was
the
part of the
power's
problem
so
with
crazy.
giving nuclear power to other countries, right? Like that was the problem that happened with India and Pakistan. They got nuclear power, and then they were able to weaponize it.
The biggest problem in the world today is not global warming. It's nuclear warming. And we have idiots that are negotiating for us. We have a guy that doesn't make it past 4 o'clock. And it's not because of age. You know, I know so many guys in their late 80s and they're better than... I said to one guy the other day, I think you're smarter than you were 25 years ago. I've known him a long time. He's 89 years old. He's sharp. He's great. Biden gives people a bad name because that's not an age. I think they say it because I'm 3 or 4 years younger. You know, I think that's why they say it. They say his age. It's not his age.
He's had
got a problem.
2 major brain
Operations.
surgeries.
Yeah, he did. Those are not good operations.
And you see what he did today? He went running towards the camera and made some apology to Native Americans, and he said that's why he's headed out west. Like he's off the reservation, so to speak, for a lack of a better term.
You know, it's interesting because during the debate, I was looking over him saying, this is strange. It's just sort of like strange things what happened.
Yeah.
But
Well, he couldn't keep it together, but do you think they knew he couldn't keep it together?
I think
Do you
so.
think that they wanted that? Is that why, like, historically, that debate was earlier than they've been in the past, right?
I think they wanted to get, well, there's a lot of theories. A lot of people said, do the debate now and we'll get him out.
Right.
I think that maybe could be.
Well, that is what happened.
But that's
So
what happened.
it's
I
logical.
think they
to
also
assume
said,
that
do
they
the
wanted-
debate now and get it over with.
Right.
I don't think anybody thought he was going to get out, really. I don't
didn't
think
make any sense,
The
did it?
debate got him out, but I think it's very unfair. Look, you have a bad debate. His numbers went down. But I think she's not doing very well right now. And I think she looks...
Well, I want to get to that too because it's hard to know. Like the whole poll thing is very bizarre for most people because most people don't answer polls. So they read the polls. And
Were
they're
you
like,
ever
"Who's
called?
getting polled?" I don't have a poll.
I was
If I did,
never-
I'd hang up.
I was never called by polls.
If I did, I wouldn't answer. I'm busy.
You know how polls are done? I'm going to get myself in
Please.
trouble. So I really don't believe too much in it. So...
Well, 2016 taught a lot of people about the ineffective.
Well, they were being
polls.
ineffective because I thought I was doing well. I'd go to a place and I'd have 30, 40,000 people. Hillary would go, they have 500 people, and they tell me I'm going to lose. I said, why am I going to lose? I had 40,000 people. She had 200 people. But, I have a theory. These pollsters, they charge you a lot of money, too. They charge you $500,000 to do some stupid poll, and they interview like 251 people. I don't think they interview them in many cases. I don't want to get myself in too much trouble.
You think it's bullshit?
I think they sit there, they make a deal, they get $500,000, and they say, Trump's leading 51-49. They announce it, and everybody says, oh. Do you understand? I don't think they... I think, look, I'm a very common sense person. I think that they probably don't always poll. Some of them probably never poll. What's the difference between 49 to 51 and 47 and a half?
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of the population. I don't think it's representative of the overall population. I just don't think
I don't
it
know
is.
of one person in my whole life that ever got called by a pollster.
Exactly. That's my point. So here's my question.
But I shouldn't say that because I'm doing very, really well in the polls.
But I think that's...
So this week I happen to believe in a verse. I only believe them if they're good. No, I like them this month. But no, I honestly believe that there's probably a lot of fraud. I had a poll, Washington Post, ABC, in the Hillary thing, won Wisconsin. They had me down 17 points the day before the election. I knew it was wrong because I had a rally. I had 29,000 people at a racetrack, and it was like 0 degrees, Wisconsin. And they had me down 17 points. In other words, you had no chance. And I won. And I called up my pollster, who's a good guy, good guy, and I believe he's legitimate. And and some of them are, some of them aren't. I said, tell me, why did they have me down so much? I mean, nobody's going to believe them the next time. They said they don't care. When you're down 17 points, people are going to stay home. They're not going to vote.
Right.
Because they're going to say, I love Trump, but I'm not going to waste my time. It's cold out. I said, but why don't they make it 4 or 5? He said, at 4 or 5, they're going to go and vote. At 17, they're not going to go and vote.
So
think of it. This is the Washington Post ABC poll. I was down 17 points in Wisconsin, and I won. It's crooked stuff.
There's a lot of crooked stuff, and I wanted to talk about that too, because one of the things that people talk about with you is the denial of the results. And I think J.D. Vance did a brilliant job the other day when he was being interviewed, and they asked him, did Trump lose the 2020 election? And he turned it around and said, was there legitimate election interference in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story on social media? And was that a concerted effort?
Well, they say it made 10-point difference, and I lost by one tenth of a point.
Wait,
they say it was 22,000.
I'm talking about it.
But look, it was much more than that, and I appreciate J.D. Vance saying that. And by the way, I think he was a great pick. Do you like JD as a
I like
pick?
him a lot. Yeah.
You're allowed to say that.
No, I do. I like him a lot.
I
I think he's a brilliant guy, and I think his ability to talk like a normal human being. He did my friend Theo Vaughn's podcast,
right.
And he just did it.
How did he do it?
He did great. He just talks like a normal human being.
Is that why you called me to do this?
No. I was.
He was a nice
once
guy.
they shot you, I was like, you've got to come in here. It's all about timing. It's all about the timing.
Timing's good.
Timing's perfect. Do you even have a scar on your ear? You got anything on there?
I do.
Let me see. We got
so right over here.
Oh, it's a tiny little mark.
It zicked right there.
Yeah. It healed up pretty fucking good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's not like some of the wrestlers, some of the UFC fighters.
No, you didn't get cauliflower.
No. It was sort of like a top shot.
Mm-hmm.
The point of the bullet was a little of the ass, but you see the thing's taken off a little bit. But it makes me a tougher guy. The fighters. The fighters love their. Bo Nickel, he's a great fighter.
Yeah, I love Bo Nickel.
How's he going to do? I think he's terrific.
He's great. He's a fantastic.
He was
fighter.
almost like undefeated in college.
He's a fantastic wrestler and one of the best mixed martial
artists. When is he fighting again?
He's fighting in Madison Square Garden in November.
Oh, that's going to be after the election?
Yep.
So I'll either go as president or I'll be depressed and I won't bother going. I think they're having a fight right now.
One of the things that was fascinating also was the denial of the election results is a pretty common thing. Hillary Clinton famously denied that she called you an illegitimate president, and she said that Russia put you in place.
Even though she conceded.
Yes.
She conceded the night of the election because she was beaten.
Yes, and it was a thing that was pretty common for people, especially Democrats, to deny the elections. There's been many of them. The Bush administration, the dangling chads, all that stuff.
Well, look at these guys in Congress. All these sleazebags in Congress that are Democrats, they're still denying 2016. But now they don't so much because, they try and pin it on me. You don't hear them say,
but here's my
they
point.
denied it right up until the end.
My point is, this idea of election fraud is a forbidden topic, and you get labeled an election denier. It's like being labeled an anti-vaxxer if you question some of the health consequences that people have from the COVID-19 shots. Oh my God, you're an anti-vaxxer. If you say, and what I say publicly, and I've said this a lot, it's not 0%. So if you ask me what is the amount of election fraud in this country, is it 0%? No one thinks it's 0%. I've never met one person, not a super liberal, progressive, far left person or a right-wing conservative, not one person thinks it's 0%. They think when you have human beings, and also you have a lot of weirdness that was going on during the 2020 elections, particularly with mail-in ballots.
And you had legislatures that had to approve, and they didn't approve, and they went out and did it anyway. And you had old-fashioned ballot screwing. I mean, you have people going up and dropping in phony votes. You had unsigned ballots, et cetera, et cetera.
There's certain people that think that they have, and the rhetoric is also that you're Hitler, and that in order to stop Hitler, you have to do whatever it takes.
That was okay, yeah.
Yeah, and this is, you're hearing this now. Kamala compared you to, said your love of Hitler yesterday.
Kamala's a very low IQ person. She's a very low IQ. I'm for taking tests, too. I think anybody that runs for president should give them tests. And it's not an age thing. It's not based. If you look back on history, 70s and 80s, some of your greatest leaders in the world history, long-time world history, they were in their 70s and their 80s. But I think you should take cognitive tests. I think they say it's unconstitutional. But I think Kamala should have a test because there's something missing. There's something wrong with her.
Well, I think it's pressure. I think the pressure and the scrutiny. You've been a celebrity for a long time, and you understand what this is like. But for someone who's in her late 40s, who becomes the vice president, who runs for president, becomes the vice president, and then all of a sudden the weight of the world is on your shoulders, and there's all these people.
I'm so sorry, Joe, but Cap. I'm so sorry, Joe, but Cap. What was all that pressure when she was on her knees? What was all that pressure when she was supposedly prosecuting? which that was proven to be a lie because of deeper research that was done about her fucking career. So all the career politicking that she did on the inside, considering law enforcement, where she was happy to celebrate putting people behind bars to use them as free labor, she didn't even do most of that herself. It was other people as well. Where's all that concern? Where's all that pressure? Joe Arpaio didn't fold like this. Vivek Ramaswamy didn't fold like this. Not nearly half the people that were on the ballot for that primary folded like this. You think Tulsi Gabbard was folding like that when she was pressuring her with all that pressure? Nah. Ain't shit. Even for Biden himself, when Biden was sharp. You know, when he was accusing Corn Pop of being a grieved assaulter. When he was supporting the Clintons with VAWA and the Super Predator bill of the 90s. What was all that pressure there? What was all that shit in? Even Hillary didn't fold like that. Even Hillary didn't fold like that. Cat. 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 Fucking cat. What it is a bunch of fucking awfuls. Affluent, white, female, urbanite, leftists, making her sound like she is Superwoman. And then, falling down to the polls. That is it. That is what it is. She's being billed as a part of a new era and a new regime, despite the fact that she was only on that ticket to make him have a female candidate, so that in the future, if she was to falter, fall over, die, retire, or need to be removed, because shit goes too bad, was for her to step in and replace him. That was all it was ever supposed to be. That was all it was ever supposed to be. And the fact that it worked out the way that it did is testament to that. Because there's no world where you're going to tell me, oh, she's under pressure, she's just having a hard time. That's what's making her say stupid shit in interviews. It's all that pressure. Even a hood overnight talking to the fattest ass wench on the block would not be under pressure like this. It's just not real. That's not real. That's fucking not real.
A lot of people clam up.
But you either have it or you don't.
Correct.
Look, this is an interview. We've covered a lot of territory, right? And you know, it's fine. I don't care. I want to. I think it's much more interesting. To do an interview with Anderson Cooper, a crazy softball interview. She took 2 days off and she studied all day long, and then she comes out with a result that was a real embarrassment. That was a really bad interview. She couldn't answer a question, and every question's not answered. I mean, like, what would you do your first day in office? Okay, I'll build a wall. I won't build a wall. There's 100 things you can say. Just say anything, right? There's something off with her.
Well,
we're dealing with the smartest people. They hate when I say, you know, when I call President Xi, they said, he called President Xi brilliant. Well, he's a brilliant guy. He controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. I mean, he's a brilliant guy, whether you like it or not. And they go crazy.
Right. It doesn't mean he's not evil, or it doesn't mean he's not
of course not.
dangerous.
But actually, we have evil people in our country.
Yes.
If you have a smart president, he can deal with Russia. He can deal with all of it. Russia would have never gone into Ukraine if I were president.
How would you have stopped it?
Automatic, 2 things. I told him. I said, Vladimir, you're not going in. I used to talk to him all the time. You're not going in. I can't tell you what I told him because I think it would be inappropriate. But someday he'll tell you. But he would have never gone in. But you know why else he wouldn't have gone in? Oil prices at $40 a barrel wouldn't have allowed him, wouldn't have given him the money to prosecute that war. Wouldn't have given him the money. I said it with I was with President Xi. I said it was almost the same conversation. With Vladimir, it was Moscow. With President Xi, it was Beijing. It was almost the exact same conversation. I said, don't do it. He would have never done it. The day I left, they flew 28 bombers over the middle of Taiwan. 28 bombers. And it's the apple of his eye, and the same thing with Russia. It's the apple. Ukraine is the apple of his eye. I used to talk to him. I had a very good relationship with him. He wouldn't have done it. He would have never done it. But he also wouldn't have done it because of the... You know, one of the reasons that what happened is, number one, he doesn't respect Biden at all. Not even a little bit. And who the hell would? But he doesn't respect him. But when he saw what happened in Afghanistan, how horribly that was handled, number one, you take the soldiers out last, not first. Okay, that was their big mistake. And we had that thing charted out, and they weren't obeying us. They weren't... Abdul is the head of the Taliban. Boom, boom, he had to do all these things. Some he didn't do. I said, nope, you got to do them all. This guy immediately took he left the equipment behind. 13 soldiers dead, but he took everybody out. He took his soldiers out before. A child would know. That's where Milley was so stupid. He was such a stupid guy, Milley. Okay, those generals should have all been fired. The Afghan The people that were involved with Afghanistan should have all been fired. Then they'd be writing books about him, how stupid he was, how bad he was. But you take your soldiers out last. I had a big rally, and I saw a child in the front row about a year and a half ago, and I called the child up. I said, do you mind if I borrow your child? Oh, yes, please. And they came up, kids 5 years. I gave them quick details, you know. I said, we want to get out of this place, and we have this, and we have this, and we have the equipment. I gave them a little thing. I said, do you take your soldiers out first or last after everything's done? You take them out last, sir. A child would know that. We took our soldiers out.
I mean, what does that mean, Trump? That's nice, but what does that actually mean?
First.
What was
and
your
we left,
plan?
And we left Baghdad.
Well, not only that, we
Bagram.
have billions of dollars worth of equipment and military vehicles that they use for parades now.
The best equipment, you have to embarrass us, the best equipment in the world.
The Taliban parade, where they've got tanks rolling down the streets and Blackhawks flying, is the craziest thing I've ever seen.
We
The
left,
fact that we left
the
all that
best
stuff there.
equipment in the world behind.
What would you
Where-
have done differently?
Well, number one, we would have taken it out. Just so you go back a little bit further. I had a couple of conversations with Abdul. And from the time I had those conversations, because they were shooting our soldiers, you know, with the sniper stuff, they were shooting a lot. They were shooting a lot with Obama, much less with me, but they were shooting it. And I said, get this guy on the phone. The press went nuts when they heard this. I had a great conversation with him. It was a tough conversation. 18 months later, there wasn't one soldier that was ever shot at. And even Biden admitted it in a moment of stupidity because he shouldn't admit it. His people went nuts. He said, yeah, well, I will admit, no soldier. We didn't have a soldier killed in 18 months in Afghanistan. Not one soldier was killed because he understood what was going to happen if that happened. I didn't have one soldier.
This was the conversation where he had an interpreter on the phone. It was either in a room or on a phone. The interpreter, this is the black guy that was talking about it, told him that he said, don't do this or this is going to happen. He pulls out a picture, hands it to him. Don't do this or I'm going to bomb your house. And then he walks out of the room or disconnects the call. It's one of these two. Conversations like these is why that happened. Does that really matter in the scope of things? Maybe, maybe not. But that is the energy in which Trump spoke on. Which this comes from his background. That makes sense.
You know, when I left, after having gotten more votes than any sitting president in the history of the country, and much more votes than I got in 2016, when I left, they started shooting at soldiers. But more importantly, what they did is they did that whole thing with, you know, leaving. He shouldn't have left, number one, should have left from Bagram, because Bagram's this massive base. It's got tremendous acreage around it, tremendous. It's a very big, it was built many years ago. And part of the reason you wouldn't have taken that is because it goes to China. 1 hour from where China makes its nuclear missiles. You should have never left Bagram. Number one, they should have left from Bagram. They should have left last. They should have got, you know, we have Americans that are still there. They should have taken all their equipment out. Everything, every plane, every screw should have been taken out, every tent. And I said that, that's when I realized that Millie was a dummy. I said, we're leaving, but I want to get everything out. Sir, it's cheaper to leave it. I said, what do you mean?
Cheaper to leave
Yeah, he
it.
said it's cheaper to leave it. That was
Cheaper.
Cheaper. He said it's cheaper. Sir,
Not more dangerous.
he just said cheaper. I said, I want every plane. I want every tank. I want the goggles. They have night goggles. They have all this stuff that these guys now have. He said, sir, it's cheaper to get out and leave it. I said, so you think it's cheaper to leave a $150 million brand new airplane in there than it is to fly it out with a tank of jet fuel and put it in Pakistan or just fly it direct to them? It's cheaper.
That's the line.
I said, this guy's nuts. I'm telling you, he was so stupid. He was so unwise. He was like an unwise man. And there were a number of them. But I defeated ISIS with the greatest generals. I had a guy who was so great. I flew to Iraq, and I met the real generals, not these idiots that we deal with. And we knocked out, you know, I defeated 100% of the ISIS caliphate. They said it would take 5 years. I did it in a matter of literally a few weeks. And we hit them hard. And he said, so we're going to hit him here, we're going to hit him there, we're going to hit him here, there. And I said, this guy's great. I like this guy. I was told it would take 5 years. That's why I went. I said, how could it take 5 years? We have brand new fighters. We have the best planes, the best weapons, the best guns, the best bombs. How could it possibly take that long? And I flew in, left at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody knew I was going. I got on Air Force One and we started flying. And when we reached about half an hour away from Iraq, that was where the airport was, big airport, about a half an hour away, they said, sir, I'm sorry, you'll have to turn off all your lights. Why? We're getting close to our site, our land. I said, you mean we spent $8 trillion and we can't leave the lights on? Think of this. 20 years, $8 trillion and we can't leave the lights on in a plane. And I said, that's okay, turn the lights on. I'm not going to fight them. That's one.
Well, this is because it's too dangerous?
Yeah, too dangerous, because they see the light up in the air. They'll shoot at it, you know? So I said, turn the lights off. Then they said, so we're going to also pull your shades off. That's okay. I said, that's okay. The plane was pitch black. All the lights outside, you know, the blinking, they call them the blinking reds. They were all turned off. And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times, and these guys are specimens. I always say, they're better looking than Tom Cruise, okay? And they're even taller. Like perfect specimens. These guys, like for a fighter, you know, you have some guys that are perfect specimens.
Right.
And, you know, they pick the best pilots in the Air Force, United States Air Force, to fly Air Force One. And I get up there, And I'm sitting, and I'm feeling my way up. You know, it's up on the 747, so you go through the stairs, but I sort of knew my way up. There wasn't a light in the plane. I'm saying, can you imagine? We spent trillions of dollars, and we're trying to fly in blind. But I got into the plane. The cockpit is dark black, little tiny light. You could see the pilot, a perfect-looking human being. His co-pilot, everybody was perfect. They were all like movie stars. You know, it's like I could have cast a movie with these guys, and nobody would believe it because they were too good-looking. So I said, how are we doing, Captain? Sir, we'll be landing in 10 minutes. And I look outside. There's not a light. And I'm saying, you know, I've landed a lot of planes. And you see like little lights at least. There's nothing. It's just pure desert. And I said, okay, Captain, good, but I'm looking. Now you've been in many planes where it has the computer sign saying 1,000 feet. Right? It goes 1,900, 800. It's a computer voice, but it sounds like, but it's an incredible voice. 700. I said, Captain, are we okay? Are we okay, Captain? There's no lights. And I'm looking, you know, normally when you land a plane, because I sit with pilots a lot, I think it's great. I think it's a great profession, everything. They're incredible. These machines are incredible. He said, sir, we're fine. No problem, sir. I said, you know, I don't see the lights up there, Captain. Sure, we're okay, you know. So, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit. You know, problem with exaggerating, they'll tell the story. They'll say Trump was a coward. So I'm sitting with him, he goes, 500, and I'm telling you, there wasn't a light on the runway, nothing. And we're going in. You okay, Captain? Everything good? Yes, sir. No problem. We'll be down in about 1 minute, sir. And I'm telling you, Joe, you know, there's always a light. There's not a little pin. And all of a sudden, psh, and you hear, wah, wah, perfect landing like glass. That's how good. I mean, these guys, between the equipment and it's genius. It's pure. It was so dark, you couldn't see a thing. There was no runway. You wouldn't know where the hell you are. You're in the middle of a desert. And then I got out of the plane. I said, thank you, Captain. That's a great job. And then I got out of the plane, and I'm going down, and I see a general and another general. And I see a staff sergeant, a drill sergeant, and various guys, all central casting. Central casting. They said, sir, would you like to rest? I said, I don't want to rest. I want to figure out what the hell are we doing with ISIS. I'm hearing we can't. It's going to take years. No, sir, we can do it very quickly, sir. And anyway, we go into the room. I mean, Biden would have taken a nap for 4 days and then left without a meeting. So we go into the room, and they have these guys. I say, how long can you do it? How long? We can do it in a couple of weeks, sir. I said, wait a minute. They told me 5 years. We can do it in, I don't know, he gave me a number like in no time. I said, why haven't you done it? Because the orders came in from Washington, sir, and they would come here and tell us what to do. Don't you challenge us? We're not allowed to do that, sir. That's not the military way. They tell us what to do, and we have to respect them.
So do you think that it was incompetence why they didn't go after ISIS?
I think it's a bad system. You know, when Mattis goes there or when Milley goes there who's stupid, and they tell these guys that are actually smart what to do, and the guys that are smart are saying, we don't like what they're doing, but they're not allowed to sort of counteract. Plus, the guys that went there are arrogant. You know, they're arrogant fools. They're like stupid fools. The way they pulled out of... you know, the way they, as an example, the way they pulled out of Afghanistan with the people falling off the planes. It was worse than Vietnam with the helicopters falling. It was so bad. There was no reason for it. Anyway, so we knocked them out. And, I mean, we have great military. We have great people, but not the television guys. And I rebuilt the military, and then they gave a chunk of it. I have to tell you, as much as it is, it's a tiny little piece, believe it or not. We have an unbelievable... I rebuilt the military. I rebuilt our nuclear. And in a way, I hated to redo it, but I got to realize how powerful that nuclear is, Joe. One bomb, Israel was gone, forget. One bomb can take out the entire East Coast. It's so bad. And I watch these poor fools talking about our oceans will rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 500 years. I mean, we have countries, right now you have 5 countries. And don't underestimate North, if you take a look at North Korea, I was there. I mean, I was with Kim Jong. I had a great relationship. I got along great with him. You know, the president, she got along great. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. Obama thought we were going to go to war with North Korea. When I met with Obama just prior to the takeoff, you know, you meet, you have a sort of a ceremonial meeting. But it lasted a long time, a lot longer than it was supposed to last. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. By the time I finished, we had no problem with North Korea. It was a little tough at the beginning, remember? He said, I have a red button on my desk. I said, I have a red button also, but mine's bigger than yours and mine works.
I like how you call him Little Rocket Man.
I said, yeah, Little Rocket. I said, Little Rocket Man, you're going to burn in hell. And it was a rough, it was so rough that people were worried. This is crazy. And then one day, I got a call. Sort of like a fight. I got a call. You know, you ever see one of that pounding? And then all of a sudden, but I got a call. And it was from him, meaning his people. They wanted to meet. They wouldn't meet Obama. He tried to meet. They wouldn't even talk to him about it. And I think he expected to go to war. Actually, I believe he expected to. And we checked their nuclear stuff out. It is substantial. I mean, I said, do you do anything? I got to know him very well. I got to know him better than anybody. And I said, do you ever do anything else? Why don't you go take it easy and relax? Go to the beach. You have beautiful beach, nice beachfront property. You know, kidding me. He said, you're always building nuclear. Just relax. You don't have to do it. Let's build some condos on your shoreline. They actually have gorgeous stuff. And he said, I just have to do it because I need it for my safety, etc. I got to know him very well. We had no problem with him. If you have a smart problem, if you have really the right president, a smart president, you're not going to have a problem. And I say it to people. We have a bigger problem, in my opinion, with the enemy from within. And it drives them crazy when I use that term. But we have an enemy from within. We have people that are really bad people that I really think want to make this country unsuccessful. When you look at what's happening at our border, Joe, when you have people coming in that, when other countries are allowed to empty their prisons into our country with murderers, we had 13,099 murderers dropped in our country over the last 3 years.
And 15,000 rapists convicted.
Rapists,
Yeah.
drug dealers, drug lords.
that's just the ones that have been accounted
terrorists,
for.
Correct. People from mental institutions.
What do you think the strategy is?
Hundreds of thousands of major criminals, tougher and worse than anybody we have. These
Well,
are
we're seeing the consequences of it. In San Antonio, they've taken over
All over.
apartment buildings. In Aurora, Colorado, they've taken over
Right.
apartment buildings. These Venezuelan gangs.
Just the beginning.
What do you think the strategy is? You know, one of the things that they've said is that you stopped a bill from being passed. But didn't that bill also include amnesty for the people that are already here?
Yeah, this is years after the fact. The damage was already done.
But what was the bill?
Well, the bill
what
was
the
nothing.
problem
It
with the
allowed
bill?
2 million people in. They were going to get amnesty. It was a horrible bill. It didn't protect us at all.
But we should just tell people what the strategy is. So one of the things
Well,
that's
I'll
been
tell
very,
you their
their strategy. One of the things that's been very clear is that they've moved a large percentage of these migrants that are coming across the border illegally. They've moved them to swing states. Like, this is what's going on with Springfield, Ohio, right?
They're in swing states. Well, that's not a swing
And
state.
now he's
I'm
on
in
Ohio.
a lot, so that's not swing. But it's called Springfield, Ohio, to be exact. And
Yeah.
Springfield, Ohio is this very nice community of 52,000 people that just had 32,000 migrants that don't speak the language dropped into their community. You can't get into a hospital. You can't get into a school. It's gone from a beautiful little place to a horror show. And the mayor is a nice guy. And the mayor says, we're looking for interpreters. I said, no, you've got to remove them and bring them back to their country. Mostly Haitians in this case. But they speak no language. They speak no
English, you mean?
In fact, even the language they do speak, they can't get interpreters. They can't do anything. And the mayor's trying to be politically correct. They're all trying to be. In Aurora, Colorado, you have the worst, probably the worst gang. MS-13 might even be, those two are the worst gangs. These are Venezuela gangs. They have taken over apartment complexes, and they're going to want to take over the whole thing. And you have a weak
And here comes
governor,
Caddy.
who's a radical left Democrat. He doesn't know what the hell to do. But you have it in many other communities, but they don't like to talk about it because it's bad for the community to talk about it. These people have been let in here by this imbecile. She's a low IQ person. Low IQ.
Right, but it's also obviously not just her. There's a strategy
Well,
involved in letting these
she was
people
in
in.
charge of the border.
Well, she's in charge of the border, but they utilize that app. The app that used to be
sure.
used. It used to be used, I think, essentially, wasn't it for shipping? Wasn't it when people were in this
It
country?
was used for shipping, and now it's used to deal with the cartels. The cartel, heads of the cartel, rich people, by the way, these are loaded. These people have so much money. They would call up, think of this, they call up the app, and the app tells them where they should take their load of illegal migrants from the Congo. We have a lot from the Congo, prisons in the Congo. I made a little bit of a sarcastic joke. A man named Dana White, who you love, who I love. I assume you love.
Love that dude.
I think he's in a class plan.
He's probably the reason why you're here.
I don't know, maybe.
He's one of the big ones.
He is the greatest guy.
I love
I
him.
always say nobody's indispensable. Everybody can be replaced. Maybe you can't be. You might not be. But Dana White, truly, I don't think. They sold it for $4 billion. I said, what the hell? Who the hell is going to pay $4 billion? And they made like a great deal.
Yeah, it's
because of
worth a lot more
him.
than that now.
Take him
Yeah.
out, I think it's a whole different.
No,
level.
he's the best
And he's
fight
also
promoter of all
the
time.
greatest guy. He spoke at the whole thing with I had just been shot, and he got up and he spoke so better than anybody. I mean, who would be better to introduce you? I asked of all the people, and I know the biggest people in the world, and they all would have loved to have done it. I said, Dana, would you do it? And it was interesting. He was away, and he said to the people, one of my guys called and said, I won't be able to do it. She had just left with my wife and family. I won't. I said, He said, no, yeah. I was a little surprised, even though I knew he was very far away. He was in someplace, and he deserved it with his family, the whole thing. And then I said, all right, and so we're looking who we're going to get. And all of a sudden she comes in, Sir Dana White just said he's going to do it, and he's coming back in tonight. He's taking it. The guy is just an incredible guy, and he's like a tough champion, but loyal. Yeah, he's got to be one of your favorite people. He's one of my favorite people.
I've been friends with him for 23 years. I love him.
So would you have, because what you're doing here is incredible. I mean, everybody tells me. All I know is today I'm going, you're in Joe Rogan today. People tell me, like I said, they say, how the hell do you know that? But it's sort of, what you've done here is amazing. Where would you be if you didn't do the UFC stuff? Would you have this show, do you think?
Yeah, I would still be doing it for sure. Yeah.
Would it be at the same? Would it be at the same level?
I don't know.
But you would have.
It's hard to know. I think one of the things that works for this show, I guess, is that I'm involved in so many different things. Stand-up comedy, UFC, and all the interests that I have that lead to the podcast.
Will you always want to do? First of all, you love UFC.
I love it. Yeah.
You love the fights. I mean, I watch
yeah.
you. I love it. They could pay you nothing. It'd be very.
They didn't pay me anything for the first 13 shows. I did it for free because they were hemorrhaging money, and I became friends with Dana. And my position was, you're going to give me the best seat in the house. I get to sit cage side for the fights. I'll do it, and I wanted to help. I was like, I think these are the guys that we always hope for. In the early days of the sport, I started working for the company in 1997. I was before the UFC was purchased by Zuffa, which Dana worked for.
Wow.
So I was a part of the previous owners, and I only did it for a couple of years. It was just too much, and I was losing money, and it was banned from cable because of Budweiser and John McCain, and you could only get it on DirecTV. And
then I came along and I gave him the
you
sites.
did, and he loves you for
never
that.
forgot it.
He loves you for that. He talks about it all the time.
Just interrupt you for one second. So they couldn't get a site because it was too dangerous,
Right.
and everybody was against it, and they couldn't get a license. And I gave him the first 2 or 3 sites.
Yep.
And they were great. And by the way, I went to the first fight. I said, I never saw anything like this. It was crazy. It was so good. Take the best fight you've ever seen. It was like that fight, right? It was so good. Then I gave it to him again, and all of a sudden it caught on. But when I wasn't in vogue, I've had time. You probably never had a time, but I had times when I wasn't exactly in vogue. Dana, they called him. He said, he's the greatest guy. There's nobody like. He said, I'll never say anything bad about that guy because when I needed, because they were having a hard time at the beginning. They almost pulled the plug a couple of times, right? He said he stood up and he gave us stuff that nobody else gave us, and nobody wanted anything to do. And he said, I will never. And there was a time where it would have been very popular for him to say bad stuff about me. He said the greatest stuff about me. He said, you're going to try and get me to say bad stuff about Trump? I'm never doing it.
No,
So
he's a very,
he's
very,
an
very
unusual
loyal guy.
guy.
Very unusual guy.
He's a
And
fantastic
a
guy.
perfect guy to be at the helm of something so controversial as the UFC.
Less controversial now. I mean, so.
Well, now it's huge. Yeah. Well, this was always the thing that I would hope that it would be. I always knew that it was unbelievably entertaining, but I just didn't know if maybe I was crazy. Maybe I loved it because I've had this long history of being involved in martial arts, and maybe like other people just think it's too violent. But
Can boxing make it?
yeah, boxing's still a great sport. I love boxing.
But it seems to be so unimportant now by comparison to UFC, don't you think?
I think, well, Dana is working with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They're going to
bringing
start
some
promoting
fights in.
boxing now. And with Dana at the helm of it, I think boxing can return because the thing is they want to make fights that other people, maybe, promoters don't want to make because they want to protect their fighter. Controversial fights where, it's dangerous. Like, you don't know this guy could lose. And so the Saudis, they're smart. They just offer a tremendous amount of money, and they're putting together fights that no one else can put together. They're doing that in boxing.
If Dana's involved, he'll probably make it good. You know the amazing thing, though, in fighting, no UFC fighter, they say, has ever died. And it looks
No.
to be much more violent than boxing. Many boxers have died. Isn't it interesting? And Dana tells me because they take so many shots to the face.
Yes, and there's also no other options to preserve yourself, to protect yourself. So if you get hit in a UFC fight, you can clinch. You can try to take the fight to the ground. You have
Yes,
options.
yeah.
Also, you don't get allowed to get knocked down and then get back up. When you get knocked down, you're concussed. And generally, if a guy's really hurt, they can be finished on the ground and the fight's over. If it's boxing, you have 10 seconds to get up. You get up, your head kind of clears, but you're still in real bad trouble, and then you can kind of run away and survive until the bell rings.
Yeah.
They're only 3-minute rounds, and then you start again. So you're getting repeated punishment to the head.
Yeah.
And then there's also the issue of guys weight cutting, which is a problem with the UFC as well. But weight cutting in boxing has led to, if you look at deaths in boxing, there's very few of them in the heavyweight division. Most of the deaths in boxing are the lightweight divisions
Wow,
because when guys
obviously.
dehydrate themselves to lose weight, to make weight, their brain is the last thing that gets rehydrated. Like, it's very difficult to completely hydrate your brain quickly. And you only have 24 hours between the weigh-in and the fight. And it used to be the weigh-ins were the day of the fight. Like when Boom Boom Mancini had a fight with Ducku Kim and killed him in the ring, which is one of the last ones on television that we've seen.
That's right.
That was a crazy event for people and heartbreaking, and it led to a bunch of different changes. And one of them is day before weigh-ins to allow people to rehydrate better, and the other one is they dropped it from 15 rounds down to 12.
Which, look, they should do that again. I'm not the fighter, but those 15-round fights were unbelievable.
They were unbelievable.
They were
Unbelievable. Yeah, you go back to the golden age.
Yeah, in terms of entertainment.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the championship rounds. Those were the greatest fights
Those
ever.
last 3 rounds were crazy.
That was
I mean,
brutal.
it's such a war of attrition. A lot of people think even like a 5-round UFC fight. The UFC is 5-minute rounds. It's so much energy you're burning out. And those last couple of rounds, those 5-round fights, the 4th and the 5th round, unbelievably brutal.
Who's the greatest UFC fighter? Are you allowed to say, in your opinion? It's tough for you to say because you do this, but who do you think is the greatest of the fighters?
There's a lot of arguments for who's the greatest of all time. John Jones, most people would say is the greatest of all time, never lost. There's certainly a really good argument for that. There's another argument for George St. Pierre. I always leave in BJ Penn in his prime, Anderson Silva in his prime, Mighty Mouse. People forget about Mighty Mouse because unfortunately he's a smaller guy. He's 125 pounds, flyweight champion. He's one of the greatest expressions of mixed martial arts I've ever seen. I think to this day.
And Khabib? What about
Khabib's
Khabib?
fantastic. But if you looked at like accomplishments in terms of championship fights, Khabib retired 29-0, but he didn't have as
And
many
probably
world
never lost
championship
a
fights.
round. They say
He might
he-
have lost to Gleison Tebow. Might have lost to him.
A round?
Might have lost a round. And that was a controversial fight where people think that Gleison Tebow could have even got the decision in that fight. I'd have to go back and watch it again to make a decision. But
They're great athletes.
the best athletes in the world, and the most dangerous sport in terms of I always call it high-level problem solving with dire physical consequences.
Yeah, it's just brutal.
That's what fighting is.
I'd never forget. So there was a fighter named James Toney.
Oh yeah, I love
And
James Toney.
he
Lights
fought
out.
as a very light fighter, and he ended up as a heavyweight. This guy went through everything. He was
Yeah.
almost like a lightweight.
He went from middleweight all the way up to heavyweight. Yeah, and
I'd
Peter
never
Vander
seen him.
Holyfield is a heavyweight.
And he was a real fighter.
Oh, yeah.
So James Toney, and I think it was St. George.
George St. Pierre?
St. Pierre. I think it was him. Who did he fight? James Toney.
No, James Toney didn't fight George St.
He
Pierre.
fought a UFC fighter.
Yeah, Randy Couture fought James Toney.
Was it
But that
Randy
was like an
Couture,
easy
maybe?
fight. That was a very easy fight. Randy Couture just took him down and
It was the
strangled
most, and he's half the size. And he just once.
Did anyone have Trump being a UFC fan in their 2024 election bingo chart? I did.
He got to the ankles. In fact,
Yeah.
the announcer said, "It's over."
Yeah,
and
he
put him
picked
to
him,
sleep.
took him down, mounted him, strangled him. It was
And
pretty
James,
quick.
but he was talking big because he was much bigger. He was a pretty big guy.
James just wanted to make some money. in
You
that
think
fight.
so?
Yeah.
I never forgot it.
I
It
don't
was
think he knew what he was
over
doing.
very quickly. And
Yeah.
he was lying, sleeping on the mat, and he was talking. He was doing the Muhammad Ali stuff, but it didn't work out. But I remember.
sold the fight.
Yeah, that was Couture probably.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Couture. George never fought a boxer in an MMA fight. If he did, he would kill them.
Was he one of the greatest?
Yes, unquestionably. That's the argument. There's like a handful of guys you can make the argument is the greatest of all time. People forget about Anderson Silva in his prime. He was unstoppable. But that's
Anderson
the thing is,
Silva.
and then there's Fedor Emelianenko, who fought
Yeah,
Pride in
yeah.
his prime. He was unstoppable. There's this.
And you have a couple now that are
Yes.
very good.
Oh, we've got so many now. Alex Carrera.
Correct.
There's an argument that he's the
He's
top
looking-
pound-for-pound fighter in
he's
the world right
looking
now.
very good, yeah.
It's unbelievable. But it's like fighters can only compete at that level for so many years. And so, in my opinion, you have to judge them at their very peak. You can't judge them when they're hanging on and still fighting. You can't judge them when they're coming up. You got to judge them in that championship peak. In that championship peak, there's a handful of guys that you would consider at the very top.
If they stopped a little bit sooner,
Yeah.
Some of them would have had, I mean, there are a couple of that you just mentioned without mentioning names, and they stopped. They had the perfect. They were unbelievable, and then at a certain age, they start getting knocked out, right?
Yes, it's unfortunate, but the thing is that same belief in themselves that lets them become a champion makes them think that they can do it long past the time that they actually can.
Well, Anderson Silva was essentially unbeatable, and then he lost a close one. Then all of a sudden,
He got knocked out. He got knocked out by Chris Weidman.
Right.
He was kind of clowning in that fight, famously, and Chris Weidman had a vicious left hook, knocked him out. And then they fought a second time. He broke his leg on Chris Weidman.
Right, that's right.
And after that fight, he was kind of never the same because that leg break injury, which Conor McGregor had, there's quite a few fighters.
That was a bad
Weidman
one.
actually wound up having the same injury, ironically. There's only been like
You're never the same because you can't
never
kick.
the same. Well, you can. Weidman is still kicking with that leg. You can, but psychologically, when you throw a kick and your leg snaps in half and you're in agony for a year, right? You have to get surgery, you have to get bolts and plates to keep your leg together, and then it takes forever for it to heal.
It always amazed me how the kicker, I mean, you have those cases, but the kicker will do tremendous damage to somebody's leg, but their leg doesn't seem to get damaged, isn't it?
It does get damaged. It hurts.
More than you
Yeah,
think.
but your shin, your shin gets very numb after a while. And the guys that are really good kickers, they're kicking the thigh and they're kicking the calf, they're kicking soft areas, and they're slamming this hard, numb shin.
Right.
Yeah, their shin gets all these like micro fractures all over the shin, and it calcifies.
Oh, wow.
Like these guys can kick baseball bats. You ever seen them break baseball bats with their shins?
No, I've never
It's
seen it.
crazy. Some guys can do 2 baseball bats. Someone will hold the baseball bat and they just kick right through them.
But see,
their
I
shins
watch your
almost get numb.
enthusiasm now, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's why you're good at it. That's why nobody does this better. Without the enthusiasm, forget it.
Well, it has to be authentic. Like that. I mean, the only reason why I do MMA commentary is because I'm very interested in it, for real. I don't have to manufacture it. I'm very interested in it. So
And you love going in there after the fight, and they're sweating all over you, they're slopping all over you. You're
They
beautiful.
bleed on me.
They're bleeding.
Sometimes their
Does
nose
that bother you a little bit? Yeah,
No,
like
no.
2 weeks ago with the guy I never saw.
Khalil Roundtree, yeah.
More stuff came out of his nose.
Yes, it was pretty nasty, but no, I'm very used to it. I just wanted
That's
him to
great.
be able to express himself.
You've done a great job.
Thank you.
You've
Thank
done
you.
a great job.
So back to you, and back to what are you? And first of all, I love this idea of you teaming up with Robert Kennedy,
Right.
And I love this "Make America Healthy Again" idea because there are chemicals and ingredients in our food that are illegal in other countries because they've been shown to be toxic. There's pesticides and herbicides, and there's a lot of shit that's been sprayed on our food that really is unnecessary, and there's a lot of health consequences that people are suffering from a lot of these things. And
Look at this chart for you.
Beautiful.
Because I had a feeling you'd be asking me. Look
you.
at this chart. These are healthier countries. Look what the United States
Came prepared with a check.
says. I'm going to send this to RFK Jr.
So this is, well, something along the... I was actually talking to RFK today, and he told me that more than 70% of young men are ineligible for the military because of their health.
I could see it.
That's
a lot
crazy.
Of it's obesity.
So here's the life expectancy versus health expenditure.
Same chart.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
USA.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Jamie's the best.
He's very good.
He's the best.
But no, but look at that. Look what the USA is.
It's not
And
good. And
they
that's our
spend all that
food.
money.
That's our diet. That's sedentary lifestyle. That's our diet. That's the chemicals we ingest. That's what that is.
But RFK is going to be very, I think he's a great guy.
I love the fact that you guys teamed up.
Yeah, it's
and
a
are you
good
guys
combination.
completely committed to have him a part of your administration?
Oh, I am. But the only thing I want to be a little careful about with him is the environmental, because he doesn't like oil. I love oil and gas. I think
Just keep him out of that.
To fire. So I'm going to sort of keep him out of a little. I said, focus on health. Focus.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want, but I got to be a little bit careful with the liquid gold.
I understand. But listen, there's plenty of good work that could be done if you focus on health.
Here's the one that my all-time favorite. Though.
What is that?
See the arrow right here? That's what I love.
Do
today.
you
I
have
love-
anyone that is pressuring you to not work with him? Have there been people
not work with
reaching-
who? To not-
RFK Jr.
Yes.
Yes, I would imagine. Because
I would
financially,
say,
he can put it down.
I would say that, and I think in many ways they've done a good job. In many ways they've done a bad job. But I would say that the big pharma wasn't thrilled when they heard that. I've actually always gotten along very well with him. I've known him a long time. He's a different kind of a guy. He's very smart, great guy. And he's very sincere about this. I mean, he really is. He thinks we spend a fortune on pesticides and all this stuff, and then you end up with that chart is a terrible chart. The one previous, it's such a bad chart when you look at where we are compared to other countries that don't spend 10 cents.
Right.
So and you save a lot of money. But yeah, I've had some people that aren't exactly thrilled. You can imagine, right?
Sure.
It's a good question, actually.
Well, certainly if there
It
have
doesn't
been
affect me.
some pharmaceutical drugs that have been prescribed that have negative consequences that these people have been profiting off of, and then you have a guy like RFK Jr. who spends an enormous amount of time highlighting those things, you could say how they've been
Right.
very reluctant to have you support him.
I would say that's an understatement.
Yeah. So what do you do to stop that from getting in the way?
Well, look, they've come up with some amazing things. I mean, I don't know how you feel. I know you're against certain vaccines, but like the polio vaccine, people had polio. It was like a disaster. And they came up, Dr. Salk, and he came up with a vaccine, and there's no polio. Now, very interesting, there hasn't been polio, but now in the Gaza Strip, can you believe that? Have you heard that? There's been a big strain of polio coming out in the Gaza Strip.
Is it vaccine-derived polio? Because, there's a strain of polio that comes directly from the vaccine, because unfortunately sometimes
I
we
don't
vaccinate
know.
people for polio.
Oh,
You
I
actually
see.
give them polio.
I haven't heard that,
Yeah.
I mean, all I can do is I sit down and I listen to him, and I'll give it a total. I would love him to be right, because if he's right, it's a lot less expensive, generally
There's
speaking.
two things that people point to when they point to the dangers of the pharmaceutical drug industry. One thing is when pharmaceutical drugs were allowed to advertise on television. We're only one of 2 countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical drugs to advertise on TV. The other one's New Zealand, but they're more restrictive than we are. People
But
are
those
worried.
ads, when you hear take a certain drug,
And then you hear all the
you say
consequences.
it causes cancer and
Yeah.
baldness. We don't like baldness.
Suicidal
and this and
ideation.
that and
Yeah.
eyesight, and you can lose your vision.
Yeah.
And I actually asked one of these guys, I would never take. I mean, of course, there's things that are so bad. They go through a whole list. I guess they save some liability, but man, I said, does that affect the purchase? Or they say it really does. When there's something you have and you read, and then they go through the list of
Side effects.
the potential side. It's not even the potential side effects.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people are just. I asked that question. People hear that. When I hear it, I'm going to take a piss. It says, may affect your vision, may cause blindness, may this.
Yes.
But
Well, I know you're aware of Callie and Casey means, right?
Yes.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out, and this is a very important thing for people to understand, is what a lot of these drugs do is they act to somehow or another mitigate the effects of poor metabolic health. But most of these problems that these people are suffering from wouldn't exist if we put an emphasis on metabolic health. If people got healthier, they started eating nutritious food and taking vitamins, a whole host of these problems that people are having would go away. And the problem with that from the pharmaceutical drug standpoint is they wouldn't be able to sell drugs to these people. And this is a
and
fear
the
that a lot of people
pesticides
have.
and things like that on the plants. And what do you think of that?
Terrible. Well, I think regenerative agriculture, unfortunately, is very difficult to scale to a point where you got a Jack in the Box on every corner.
Right, that's right.
If everybody wants food, and we have food deserts, and we have places like Los Angeles where no one's growing anything, and everything has to be shipped in, and it's very difficult to feed that many people. We've created this incredible society where we have these enormous cities, but it's very difficult to get food to these people. And then for a lot of these people in low-income areas, the only food that's available is cheap, unhealthy food.
That's right.
And we could fix that. That's if we could send $175 billion to Ukraine, we could do something to fix a lot of the health problems that the United States has. And I think it would help us as a nation overall. If you just put it out there that, hey, as a nation, we're going to make a concerted effort to get people healthier. Just put it out there, and people start making better choices.
Well, when you look at that chart,
It's crazy.
They just gave me that chart because they said you may want to discuss this topic, which I know is a big topic for you. And when I looked at that chart and I looked at how unhealthy we are as a nation, that's a pretty big thing.
How are you so healthy? Is it golf?
No, it's
It's cooking.
genetics. I believe. I'm a big
Genetics
believer.
is a big factor.
I really am. I mean, my father was.
Unfortunately, it is a big factor for health. Some people are just way more robust. But you do play golf a lot, and that is
both of my
exercise.
parents. For me, it's good.
Fresh air,
It really is. It's fresh air. You're outside.
Yeah.
Even mentally, you're focused on that
Right.
3-footer.
Yes.
For a couple of hours, you're not. And I go quick. I play fast, real fast, and I'm in, I'm out. But it gives me. I was never one that could run on a treadmill. And I can do. When passing a physical, they asked me to run on a treadmill, and then they make it steeper and steeper and steeper. And the doctor said, it was at Walter Reed, they said, it's unbelievable. I could have gone, I'm telling you, I felt I could have gone all day. But I said, Doc, I can do this all day long. I have no problem. But it's boring to me. Do you understand?
Right.
It's just boring.
False exciting.
But I did it for so long. They couldn't believe it that I did it. And I never did. I don't do it. I don't do it. I have friends that run this stuff all day long. But I had no problem doing it. But it's really boring. So with golf or something, or tennis or whatever.
Right.
But golf, as you get older, there's something really good about it. And you have competition. With your friends,
Concentration,
and it's a great
focus.
handicap sport.
And it's also a thing, I think, it cleans your mind, because when you're looking at a shot, that's all you can think of when you're executing.
It gives you a couple of hours. It's interesting. Like with
That's
tennis,
facts.
if you're much better than somebody, you can't really play with somebody. It doesn't work. You can give them sort of the equivalent of strokes, right? But it's not this. With golf, you can play with a lousy guy and give him a stroke a hole, or 2 strokes a hole, or something. It's a good handicapping sport.
Right.
But it gives me a little exercise. But I haven't played in a long time. I won a lot. I won 32 club championships.
Didn't you play right after you got shot?
No. What I did is I played with Bryson DeChambeau. Do you know Bryson?
Yes.
The pro.
Uh-huh.
He's a great player. And we played, it was a certain thing that we played, I guess called breaking 50 or something. 50 we play from a certain tee, and if you can break 50. And it got tremendous ratings. Sort of like a crazy thing. He's a great guy.
But wasn't
He's
that like a couple of days after you got shot?
I don't know. I know I haven't.
That was one of the funnest things we were on the golf course.
I think I did, yeah, maybe I did. But I view it very interestingly. I'm running for president of the United States. To me, it's such a big deal. It's so important. So
It's
you're
the
now,
biggest deal in the free world.
it's 100 times bigger than the Super Bowl, and it's one person.
Yeah.
So you're down to 2 people, and we start off at 9 billion, because you have 9 billion, they say, in the world. Who knows what that number is? But you get down to 350 million. Sadly, we have no idea what we have in this country, but let's assume it's 325, 350. And you're down to 2 people. It's the biggest thing in the world. And when I heard she took off yesterday, and she took off the day before, and she's going to take off tomorrow or the next day, I haven't taken a day off in 56 days. That's a long time. I haven't taken one day off. I don't want to play that. This is too exciting. Golf is great, but this is too exciting. This is more exciting than anything you can do. And
Also, it's the home stretch.
It's the home stretch. Who would take a day off? So we have 11 days left now. And think of it. So I think I've gone 54, 55 days in a row. No days off. And I make speeches oftentimes, or sometimes not, but I make speeches. And when you make a speech, and my speeches last a long time because of the weave, I weave stories into it. And if you just read a teleprompter, nobody's going to be very excited. You got to weave it out. So, but you always have to, as you say, you always have to get right back to it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's not good. But the weave is very, very important. Very few weavers around. But it's a big strain on your, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Trump certified weaver. Waves. I have waves on deck. LaShawna's gonna put in my dreads. Beautiful dreads, beautiful dreads. Big, beautiful box braids. Bigger than anybody's ever seen.
You got to be careful with the voice. You can lose that voice. The voice wasn't designed. I said today, so I made a big one last night. I was in Las Vegas. A big one the night before in Arizona. Big one. I mean, they're all big. There's never been anything like it in terms of crowd. Never been plus. Never been plus. They say, he talks about crowds. Says, you know what's very interesting? So we get crowds that are really big. They say, you know, I've never had a story, because I don't get good press. I don't think I've had a good story in years. I really don't. I swear, I don't think you were talking about it a little bit with Oprah. Everybody loved me. I don't think, I became president of the United States. I did great the second time. I did much better. I don't want to get you in any disputes, but I won that second election so easy. And not just because
but
of...
let me get to that. I want to talk to you about
here's
that.
the thing. I did that. And now I've gotten a nomination again. And don't forget, to get these nominations, you go against very smart people. Ron DeSantis was hot. Had to go through him. Nikki Haley was hot. Had to go through her. I went through everybody. Record time, right? Record time. I got 3 nominations in a row. I won the first time, did much better the second time. You know, I got millions of votes more the second time. And now I'm doing it a third time. And it's an incredible thing. I never get a good story. I only get bad press. Now, I will say this. It's a lot easier if you're a Democrat. If I were a Democrat...
You get a lot of positive press.
I would get a lot of positive
Yeah.
press.
No, it's a creepy, corrupt business. And the media, to a large extent, acts as a propaganda arm for the Democratic Party.
It's not even believable.
Yeah, it's bizarre to watch. And most young people, I think, are aware of it. I think most boomers still, unfortunately, read the newspapers and believe in CNN.
But it's getting younger. Let me
Yes.
tell you, it's getting, for us, for a consumer.
Yes.
And you know, I consider myself a
it's
person.
the internet. It's because the internet's giving people information that they're not getting from anywhere else. And they like the Very Fine People hoax, the Russiagate hoax, all these different things that they've done. They try to pin on you. That's like, it's a clear distortion of what you actually said.
The bloodbath hoax.
Yeah.
I was talking about the auto industry.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
a bloodbath because Japan and China are taking our auto. And I said, it's a bloodbath. They said, he used the word bloodbath.
You said,
know,
if you don't win, it's going to be a bloodbath.
That's
They're
right.
gonna take over.
It's
That's exactly
a
what you
terrible
said.
thing they do.
But that's the problem with propagandists, because they take things out of context, and ultimately what they do is they diminish their own credibility, because people don't want to listen to it anymore, because they see that they've done that, and they recognize what's going on, and they feel insulted. Their intelligence
Well,
is
look at the
insulted.
ratings.
Yes.
You know, shows like yours. So I have a son who's very smart, and Paul Barron, right? And he knows all about you. He knows about guys I never heard of. He said,
The casual glaze of his own child. You know, I have a son. He's very tall, very big. He breeds past his women every single weekend. You know, Baron. Nothing like my unknown son, Carol. He just goes out in the Middle East. He comes home. He's like, Dad, this is my new bride. She already has 5 kids. Beautiful breeder. Just beautiful breeder.
Dad, you don't know how big they are. They're big. You know, so I said, who the hell is he? Like Ross. He said, Dad, he's a great guy. I mean, guys that are doing, it's a whole new world out there.
It's a different world. And
But, you know, I'm on TikTok now.
Congratulations.
And I've done really well. No, but you know the crazy, have you seen the numbers? Billions of hits. It's crazy.
I'm sure. TikTok's a wild application.
And I've
though.
gone up 30 points. A Republican is always down 30 with young people. I'm plus 30. And I'm on TikTok.
I think
it's had a huge impact.
young people are rejecting a lot of this woke bullshit.
Yeah,
Young
they
people
are.
are tired of being yelled at and scolded. They're tired of these people that they think are mentally ill telling them what the moral standards
You
of
know
society should be today. People are upset.
There's a big difference now, but even in just a couple of years, I was shaking hands with people. They're young people.
The rebels are Republicans now. They're like, you want to
Yeah,
be
I
a
never thought
rebel,
of it
you want
that
to
way.
be
I think
punk
you're
rock, you want to
Yeah.
buck the system. You're a
Yeah.
conservative now. That's how crazy. And then the liberals are now pro silencing criticism. They're pro censorship online. They're talking
They
about
come after
regulating free speech and that regulating the First Amendment. It's bananas to watch.
Joe, they come after their political opponent.
Well, they
I got
do.
more guys. I always say, I kid, but I'm not kidding. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the meanest of them all. He'd kill you in 2 seconds if he didn't like you, right? I've been under investigation more than Alphonse Capone, only because it's political opponent stuff. And I've won. I won the big case in Florida. I'm winning the other stuff. You win, but you know what they did? They did something that's only done in third world countries. They came after their political opponent.
Yes.
I could have put crooked Hillary in jail.
Well, not only that, but they're weaponizing it by saying that that's what you're going to do once
Oh,
you
yeah,
get in
isn't
office,
it
by
great?
ignoring
He
what
is
they're
what-
doing right now. It's crazy.
I heard it. Somebody was defending me today. They said, no, they say that's what you're doing to him. They're going, he's going to put us in jail. He's going to invest. They said,
what you're
that's
doing.
what you're doing to him.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, will you do that? Will you do that to him? To them, if you win. You know, the presidency has tremendous power. I could have put crooked Hillary.
I
in
respected
jail.
that you didn't, because what you said was it would be bad for the country.
No, I can't. I couldn't even imagine. You have, first of all, Secretary of State, but more importantly, the wife of the President of the United States of America going into jail. And if you ever saw, when I'd say something about her, they'd all say, I didn't say it. I never said it. They say, lock her up, lock her. And I'd always go, take it easy, just relax. We're going to win this thing. Take it easy, take it easy. And I'm telling you, I kept it down, just the opposite. Now they say, oh, Trump wanted to put her in jail. No, I saved her from going to jail. They had more stuff on her. And Comey had it, because when Comey got up, and he stupidly, because he's a stupid guy too, he goes, he's a stupid son of a bitch. He got up, Joe, he got up, and instead of saying she's innocent of all charges, he went over each charge. And each charge was a killer. And he'd go, and as far as her doing this, she's innocent. And this, and then she's only an unfair prosecutor for it. We go, but every time you heard these charges, they sounded so bad. They were bad. And all it was is he wanted more airtime. If he would have gone out and said, I've thoroughly investigated Hillary Clinton, and she's done nothing that we feel is wrong. It would have ended. Instead, he wanted to be up there because he's a PR hound. He's a hog. And he starts going through, and you know what he had? They had a huge problem because FBI is great. The people there, not the top people, the people, the real people, the people that work there. It's like the real generals that I told you about that defeated ISIS in record time. The FBI guys are great. I'll bet you I'd be at 95% in the FBI.
I bet that's right.
Underneath.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. So he goes with Hillary, and instead of just saying, he goes through each charge.
Right.
And
Which
even I
looks
was saying,
damning.
man, those are bad charges.
Sounds terrible because
And this is before I got
those charges.
Don't forget, this is before I got there.
Right.
Now he was trying to protect her, but he did her a great disservice.
Because he wanted attention.
He was stupid.
So I want to talk about 2020 because you said over and over again that you were robbed in 2020.
Yeah, totally.
How do you think you were robbed? Everybody always cuts you off. I'm going to allow.
Well, they not only cut you off. Well, what I'd rather do is we'll do it another time, and I would bring in papers that you would not believe. So many different papers. That election.
Trump not taking an opportunity to gab and waiting to bring on evidence at another time? Genius.
So crooked. It was the most crooked election.
Okay, but give me some examples of how.
Well, let's start with the top and the easy ones.
Okay.
They were supposed to get legislative approval to do the things they did, and they didn't get it. In many cases, they didn't get it.
What things?
Anything.
Legislative approval
like
of-
for extensions of the voting, for voting earlier, for this,
Right.
for all different things. By law, they had to get legislative approvals. You don't have to go any further than that. If you take a look at Wisconsin, they virtually admitted that the election was rigged, robbed, and stolen. They wouldn't give access in certain areas to the ballots because the ballots weren't signed. They weren't originals. We could go into this stuff. We could go into the ballots, or we could go into the overall. I'll give you another
Are
one.
you going to present
Well,
this
let me-
ever? Like, do you think like?
Let me just give you one
okay,
more
go ahead.
before. 51 intelligence agents come up that the laptop was from Russia. It turned out to be totally false.
51
It wasn't.
former intelligence agents, right?
They say that I don't believe it's this much, but it doesn't matter. I won by the way. I lost by like, I didn't, but they say I lost, Joe, they say I lost by 22,000 votes. That's like 1/10 of 1%, less than that. It's a tiny little 22,000 votes spread over, that's spread over this period. So, 51 intelligence agents lied. They lied. They lied. They knew it was. It was Hunter's. It was from his bed. It was Hunter's laptop. They said it was created by Russia. Russia. It was the Russia hoax. The Russia hoax was a big hoax. It was all a big hoax. So
that's clear. That's one example. That is a good
that's a big example. They say it made a 17-point difference. That's a big example. But that's only one. And you could go into the ballots where they wouldn't give you access to the ballots. You could go into the ballot harvesting. You could go into $500 million for the lock boxes.
But just in terms of narrative, so there's two things, right? There's the Russia hoax. There's the collusion with Russia that was never proven, right? That's one.
No, it was proven it didn't happen.
Right. But they talked about it on
But it
television.
took 2.5 years to prove.
But not only that, but it was a constant narrative on television. So that's a constant narrative that gets into people's minds, especially low information people that just watch the news, that you're in collusion with Russia. So that's one. So that changes the narrative. And then you have the 51 former intelligence agents that work with the original Twitter and get them to remove links. You can't share it on DMs. You cannot share that story. They swept that story because they said it was Russian disinformation, even though they knew it was not.
100%.
So that's two examples that are real examples. Now, anyone who considers himself a legitimate, objective observer of American politics, if you really want the best person to win, you would want people to not lie. And the only reason why they got away with this lie was because they continually labeled you as this horrible threat to democracy and Hitler. They kept saying you're going to be a dictator, ignoring the fact that you weren't a dictator for the 4 years where you were actually the president.
I was actually the opposite of a dictator. I was a very straight guy. But look, those three things, you take those three things. Each one of them by themselves causes the result to be different. Okay?
It does.
And then you can go into 100 other things. There's so many. We can't have corrupt elections, and we can't have open borders. We need to have a country. You need borders. You need fair elections. And I'll tell you the other thing you need is you need a free and fair press. One of the things I like about doing a show like this, can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing the show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not gonna
I
do
will talk to her like a human being. I will
If
try
she
to have
did
a
this kind of an
conversation with her.
interview with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. She'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her. I wouldn't try to interview her. I just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her on. Trying to get her to express herself just as I don't know if I don't think these formats are good. I don't think that two people, first of all, I hate the idea of the presidential debates because I hate the idea of a time limitation on complex ideas. Also, you have to break.
I think you have to have the debates.
Right, but the way they do the debates, I think, is the wrong way to do it. I think they should have a conversation. I think you and Kamala, you sit across the table with no one in the room but the two of you. Of course, you're not going to shout at each other. Of course, you're not going to insult each other.
I mean, it may get. They used to do
Hopefully
it.
It wouldn't, but that would be the way to do it.
They used to do it that way.
To put cameras on you with no one interfering with press, with checking whether or not it's factual, especially when it's biased, because they checked you all those times and they didn't check her with clearly things that were inaccurate, right? So have two people just have a conversation with it without a time constraint. And also this idea that they cut off the microphone.
Well, no crowd.
No crowd. Crazy too, because you're good at working crowds.
I would rather have a crowd.
Of course
I
you
would
would. You're
rather.
good at crowds.
But I had no. So they gave me an alternative. I don't think he wanted to debate.
Why did they want no crowd? What was
Because
the
I think they
argument?
thought I wasn't going to accept it. So I believe what they wanted to do is have me not accept. So they gave me a deal I couldn't refuse, and I said, I'll do it. Okay? It's like the mob.
Right.
I'll take it. So they came to me. They said, we'll debate Joe Biden. You know, that thing got tremendous ratings too. That was crazy. But we'll debate Joe Biden, but you can't have a crowd. They also wanted sitting down. I said, that's the only thing. I said, look, you got to stand up. You can't really sit down.
Right.
You know, in the old days they did sit down a little bit, but
He gets tired.
You got to stand up. And they agreed to it. It was a very tough thing. It almost killed it. They wanted to have like desks where we said. I said, I think we should stand up. And that was the only thing I asked for. I said, you got to stand up. I thought it looked bad for like the public, but they said no crowd and cut off the mic. And I said, I can live with it. I mean, I can live with it. And they thought I was going to reject it. And then they would say he didn't want to debate Sleepy Joe.
Right.
That's what they thought was
Well, they tried to say that with you in comment as well. They tried to say that you don't want to debate her as well.
No,
but
by the way, with her, number one, I'm leading. Number two, I didn't. They also said it with the primary. So I had like 10 poor guys in the primary. No stupid guys. I mean, they're governors and they're senators. They're not stupid people. Some are stupid, but not all of them. And all my guys said, you have to be in the debate. I said, why? I'm leading by 74 points. The closest guy to me, I'm like 60 points, 70 points higher. Why would I stand there like an idiot for 2 hours and let every one of them scream at me, I'm going to do the focus?
Right.
And I said, I'm not debating. And it was a very smart thing because, they just killed themselves.
The Republican primaries.
Yeah, the
yes.
Republican primaries. I like debating. I think you have to debate. But I like
it has to be
debating.
fair.
I like debating like the Rosie O'Donnell debate. I like debating when you have a remember the Rosie O'Donnell?
Yeah, very funny. Megan
Crazy
Kelly.
thing, Megan. That was a hell of a question, man. If I didn't come up with that answer,
a great
I was
line.
Well, what it was is, we had 28,000 people. That was the Cleveland Arena where the Cavaliers played.
Right.
LeBron James. I'm not a big fan of LeBron James, but he is a good basketball player. But that was and when I said that, the place went crazy. And she
'Cause it's
kept
funny.
talking. No, she had like 10 other.
Yeah, well, Megan said you said it to other people and you admitted you did. But it was funny. It was a comedic timing moment.
It was fun.
That's what they wanted
It was
to avoid.
lucky I did it because she was drowned. She wasn't finished that question, but she
Right.
kept talking,
Right,
but you
right,
couldn't
right.
hear. To this day, they don't know what she said, but it wasn't buzzing. So anyway, but we had a good time.
But it's comedic timing, and that's the reason why to have a debate in front of a large audience. And then they
Well, how
probably
did I
thought
do
you
with the
had
Al
stacked
Smith
deck.
dinner? I got very
That was
good
great.
reviews on that.
That was great. It was very funny.
I got
It's
good
very funny
reviews.
stuff. The Tim Wall stuff was very funny.
Yeah.
It's funny.
That's a real beauty.
That's a crazy one. She said that she had picked him, and this is one of the questions I want to ask her, when she was sleep deprived. She said she was suffering from sleep deprivation when she picked him, which is just like, hey, maybe take a nap.
So I was okay. Look, let's see how it all turns out. I think we're going to win. I think we're way ahead now. I think we're way ahead. But
Can I bring you back
if
to
they
2020?
lose,
Can I bring you back?
I think they're going to look at two things. They're going to say they should have had a primary, even if it was a short primary.
Yes.
They shouldn't have picked her. And then she's going to say I shouldn't have picked this guy.
She shouldn't have picked that guy.
That guy's a
just
disaster.
the lying about Tiananmen Square.
Everything.
Admitting that, yeah, the military record,
But
assistant
she
coach
lied
versus
too. She
head
lied
coach.
too.
Yes.
Little thing. So I did McDonald's last week.
I saw that.
And I actually got a call from your friends at Google, from Sundar. That's pretty good, right? He said, this is the biggest thing we've had in years.
You
The
at
hits.
McDonald's?
At McDonald's. Did you know that? It was one of the...
That was funny.
Who's a great guy, by the way, but he said, this McDonald's thing, I want to tell you, it's one of the biggest things we've ever had on Google. It just hit. But the reason I did, and I actually, you never know about this stuff. I thought it was a throwaway. I didn't think our conversation was a throwaway, but I thought I'd walk in, and that was only to highlight the fact. And I have a friend, he owns like 56 of these McDonald's, and he said, do you want to use one? I said, yeah, I love it. So we went there, and the crowd was crazy. They had 28,000 people around it, the whole thing. Did you see the outside? It was crazy. The cars couldn't get through. Secret Service was not exactly thrilled. We had no idea what the hell. But I went into the place, and I did the French fry thing. And it just hit. But that's like in life. Sometimes you do. I thought it was like a quick throwaway. We're going to be there for 15 minutes. Then I said, I've worked here for 15 minutes, which is 15 minutes more than she worked here. She lied about McDonald's. And
Is that proven that she never worked at
100%.
McDonald's?
Well, McDonald's has no information. No, she has no information. There's nobody. The manager said she never worked there. It was a certain place, and he said they never. No, she lied. She's a liar. You know what they do? They'll say, like, on any one of the questions, take any, they'll say, it's the exact opposite of what I say. IVF. He's against IVF, fertilization.
Right.
And it's the exact opposite. I came out immediately strongly in favor. And they do ads. I'm against it. It's wrong. On every single topic. And, she changed policies on 15. I've never seen anybody change on more than one. You can maybe get away with one. Her whole life, fracking, every single thing that she was for, the confiscation of guns. She wants a confiscation. Now she's saying everybody should have a gun. In fact, we're going to get her a MAGA cap. I'm going to send her a MAGA cap. But she's changed, and I don't think people are buying it.
Well, some people are buying it because they want to buy it, because it's blue no matter who. There's a certain percentage of our population that's going to vote Democrat no matter what.
That's
and
true.
They're pressured. There's their community, their ideology. Left
I don't
is
understand.
good, right is evil.
I don't understand why. Okay, you have a wall, or you have I built 570 miles of wall. I built a lot of wall, exactly the stuff. But you have a border. What I don't understand is who would want people to come into our country from places unknown, like sometimes they'll say about a fighter, from parts unknown, right? Remember Haystacks Calhoun, from parts,
Yeah,
from parts unknown, the oldest, those are the oldest, that's even before you. But who would want people to come in, pouring into our country? We don't know anything about it.
But I want to ask you this. Why do you think they're doing that?
I think because...
Do you think they're trying to buy votes? Do you think they just
I
want
think-
cheap labor? Like, what's the
Okay,
idea?
there's a couple of theories. They hate our country, they're stupid, or they want to buy votes. It's one of those three things.
Yeah.
They want it. Now, they are trying to get people registered who, don't even know what the country
And they're
is.
trying to give people amnesty, people that live here. They're trying to give them
amnesty, they
path
want
to
to give them
citizenship.
citizenship, and they want to... Well, how
And
about what
if you
happened...
think about the amount of money that they've given them when they've come here, the food stamps, the benefits that even our poor people aren't getting.
$200 billion, and that's a way low number. That's a way low... it's interesting. New York has always been like... sort of like always looking for money. They've spent $100 billion on this stuff. I don't know where and they're not getting the money from the federal government. It's crazy. And because the mayor came out and said, we can't live like this.
They investigated him.
He gets by the way, I called him. I said, he just got himself indicted. This group is stupid, but they're vicious. They're stupid people, but they're vicious people.
The
which is a bad
2020
government.
elections, you say you have all this evidence that it was rigged. Why haven't you put this evidence in a consumable
I did.
form? In what?
Oh, I did. I have books on it. And by the way, books have been written on it. We have an author named Hemingway, who is a great writer. She wrote a book on it, but many books have been written on it. There are books that are... What's happened is judges don't want to touch it. They would say you don't have standing. They didn't rule on the merits. The merits never got there. The judges didn't have what it took to turn over an election.
Let's talk about the potential vulnerabilities for elections and election fraud. One of them is mail-in ballots. The other one is if someone can break into voting machines, if someone can hack voting machines. Those are two huge ones.
So
And
Elon
can be
Musk,
done?
Elon Musk, I think he said it publicly. I hope he did because I wouldn't want to be the one. But he's a really smart guy, and he's a very good guy with computers, right? You'd say he's
He's one of the smartest people alive.
Anybody that can land that 20-story building and perfect and
While he's doing Starlink, while he's doing
talking
Tesla,
to me
while
about
he owns Twitter.
and then he agrees to Starlink,
And he tweets 100 times a day.
He's an amazing guy. Right?
Yeah.
He said to me that unless you have paper ballots, it can never be an honest election. That's a big statement.
It's a big statement.
We should go to paper ballots. France did. They went to mail-in voting, and it was all messed up.
What can
the
be done?
amazing thing with the machines? So we have the machines. They cost 10 times more. Paper ballot would cost 8%. And they make paper ballots that are all watermarked and everything else. They're very sophisticated. But if you take a look, paper ballots, 8% the cost. And you're done by 9 o'clock in the evening, right? Now we have this sophisticated machine. It goes up to heaven. It goes all over the place and down and around. And they say, we'll need 2 weeks to figure out who the hell won the election.
Do you think that's by design?
Yeah, I do. I think it's very good. That's my opinion.
You're allowed to have an opinion. Let's say you win in November. What can be done to mitigate these problems? What could be done at the level that the president has power?
Well, if I win, this will be my last election. But I think I owe it to the country. Yeah. But I think I owe it to the country. We have to have fair elections.
So how can you fix that?
Jimmy Carter was in charge of the commission, like many years ago. And they should put him and Scoop Jackson and various senators, distinguished people that were retired. And they came up with a report. And the report's primary finding was you cannot have mail-in ballots. Because if it's a mail-in ballot, I went to the voting booth the last time, whatever it was. And I walked in Palm Beach. And I walked in, and they know me. They said, Mr. President, could I see your identification? Well, here's this, here's that, everything. And then you sit and they watch you sign, and there's not a lot you can do. I mean, if you want it to be dishonest, it's sort of
right.
If it's not that, I'm going to send them a ballot.
Right.
It has to go through the postal services. It has to go through a lot of people. They mail you houses that the house was demolished and the people have left it. It's so bad. The one thing with Jimmy Carter, he had a very strong commission. It was no mail-in ballots. And we're the only one that does elections this way anymore. They've gotten away from it.
And it ticked up in a big way after COVID. It used to be like soldiers serving overseas.
They used COVID to cheat.
Yeah. Well, they used COVID to certainly push this mail-in ballot. Another thing
but they used COVID to cheat.
But here's another.
And the last election was a little bit of a. You couldn't even get security guys, big, strong guys to watch. You know what? They'd call them and they were afraid to go out. We were in the middle of COVID. Mm-hmm. We were in the middle of COVID, right smack in the middle, and they didn't want to die. They didn't want to catch it. It was like, in a way, it was like a ghost town. And the whole thing, but mail-in ballots are bad thing. Yeah.
That certainly is a problem. Mail-in ballots are a problem.
But every other country,
voter ID.
A voter ID?
Voter ID is the most bizarre argument that I've never seen anybody articulate in a way that's convincing.
Because
why
they want
don't
it cheap.
voter. Well, it doesn't make sense any other way. I've tried to straw man it, or I tried to steel man it, rather. I've tried to look at it from a position why would you not want people to have ID? And a lot of the ideas are just ridiculous. You need an ID to get a driver's license.
So here's now the next step. Gavin Newsom, one of the worst governors in the world.
Newsom.
I used to call him.
Newsom. Gavin Newsom.
It's just a whole con job. But Gavin Newsom, the other day signed a bill that you are not allowed to ask a person, even ask them whether or not they have voter ID.
Then what could be a charitable reason why anybody
because they
would
want cheap.
That would be the only thing that makes sense.
But that's taking it to the next level.
Right.
Now, you have ID. The Democrat National Convention, when they had it the last time I saw it, they had a sign, like a billboard, and the name of the person, where they live, how they live, who the hell their boyfriends are, every single. It was in a big picture. That's for there. They have an ID, a big ID. It was hanging like you were a prisoner. They had these massive cards, everything. And yet when it comes to the vote, in theory, the most important thing we do, okay? When you go to a grocery store, you get ID.
Nice.
But for a vote, it's supposed to be a sacred thing, and it should be a sacred thing. No voter ID, because they want it cheap.
Well, it doesn't make sense in any other way. I've tried to look at it.
There's no other way.
There's no argument that anybody's presented that makes any sense why.
You know the funny thing, Joe? The Democrats, the people, they all think you should have it. In other words, you should have it.
Yeah.
If you go to the people, Mrs. Schwartz, Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Jones,
sure.
They say, of course, yeah. The Democrats, they say yes. It's the politicians that don't want it, like Schumer and these guys, they don't want it. Because they want to be able to cheat. Because you know what? If they didn't have it, okay, who is going to vote for somebody that wants open borders? Who's going to vote for somebody that wants to have men playing in women's sports? I have never had one person come up to me and say, President, you got to do something to allow men to play in women's sports. Have you ever, just like I've never been called by a pollster. I told you my little theory on pollsters, okay? I'm getting myself in trouble with some of these things, but I don't really care. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, we want to have men play in women's sports. And, you know, I had a funny thing. At a property I own in California, I have a woman who's a very good athlete, and she works there as a manager. And Brian Urlacher, the big Chicago Bears great player, 10-time All-Star, I guess, Hall of Fame, great guy, big, strong guy. And she said, oh, he's one of my favorite athletes. Can I have a picture? And I took a picture. I sent it. And I noticed she was the size of his leg. His leg was bigger than she was. And I put it out. Should men play in women's sports? It was just so ridiculous.
What's one of the most bizarre and polarizing ideas that's promoted by the
But
left?
who wants it? Now, unless you're going to cheat in elections, you're never going to get. Nobody wants it.
Right.
I don't think anybody wants it. I've been told everything. You can. Some people want this. I don't know of anybody that wants open borders. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, President, you got to let the world come into our country.
Right.
Now, if they won, so they have 21 million, I think it's much higher than that because you have gotaways. You know, gotaways where they just walk in, they walk in. But, and the other thing you have is human traffickers. You have traffickers, and they traffic in women, and they're going wild. Now, we used to, you know, we have to look at the trunk of cars. Can you believe it? They put women in trunks. They put 3 women in a trunk. These people are savages. They're horrible. The worst people. And they're making, the kind of money they make on drugs, they're almost making on trafficking now. And the thing that's made it hot is the internet. That's what, you know, but you think of it almost as an ancient thing. But it's the internet. But who would want to have these things? Who would want to have, there's so many, the transgender operations, where they're allowed to take your child when he goes to school and turn him into a male, to a female, without parental consent. Who wants this? Does anybody want this? I've never heard of anyone, and I can go into 10 different things. The only way they get them is by no voter ID. You can't have voter ID. They don't want any, they want to cheat. There's only one reason, because the voter ID is so basic. It's the most basic thing.
It's very
there is.
basic.
Who would want this? They want it so they can cheat, because their policies are no good. I'll tell you, they're very smart when it comes to that. They're very smart, although they're not smart in terms of politics in a way, because what do they have that people want? They really don't have. They give away a lot of health care, a lot of stuff, but for the most part, their policies are terrible. Their policy on military, she's running on a tax hike. She's going to raise your taxes. You're going to hear this. We are going to raise your taxes, and people clap. But who is going to win? All my life, I grew up with politicians, lower taxes. She's politicking that we are going to raise your taxes.
Well, they want to raise, the idea is you want to raise the taxes to the highest earners.
I know, but
they
it really
think that
doesn't work
millionaires
out.
and billionaires are not paying their fair share.
But it doesn't work that way.
Well, it's a narrative, right? And it's a narrative that appeals to people that are not doing well. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, our problems are that these rich people are not paying taxes.
Well, the problem is that the rich people are going to leave, and they're going to close up their companies, and then the other people aren't going to have jobs. You know, that's what happens.
It does happen in other countries.
But the whole, because you brought it up. I'll tell you what, we just, he's doing a very good job in Virginia. Glenn Youngkin, I don't know if you like him, not like him.
I don't know him.
But you don't know the governor of Virginia? So we have a case where they found thousands of illegal ballots. A judge just ruled that they have to be able to vote. This happened today, just before I walked in there. A judge just ruled that you have to keep those people in. They're illegal. They're illegal votes. Now, I think they'll be overturned at the next court. One thing I found, because I had a couple of things that they get overturned a little bit, you know, the system. Because the system, you have to hope that the appellate judges are honest. Otherwise, we don't have a country anymore. Very important. But the whole thing with illegal ballots has got to be looked at. You have to have voter ID, and you have to have additional ID. You have to have an ID that shows that you're a citizen of the country.
I agree.
They don't want that either.
I agree. One of the things that I want to talk to you about is the JFK files. And one of the things that you said was that if they showed you what they showed me, this was your quote, you wouldn't want people to know it either.
So I opened them up partially. I was met with, from good people. I mean, look, good people. People that were well-meaning. Mike Pompeo was one of them. He's a good person. They called me. They said, sir, would rather have you not. And I did open them. But I was asked by some people not to open them. There's a Martin Luther King file, too, by the way, that they'd like to see. I don't know if you know, but there is that. But JFK in particular. So they called me. A lot of good people called me. People that that you would find reasonable people. And they asked me not to do it. So I said, well, we'll close it for another time. But if I win, I'm going to open them up. I'm just going to open enough.
Why didn't you open it up the first time?
Because a lot of times,
what was the hesitation?
Addresses, people that are still living. There are people that are affected, and there could be some national security reason that that I don't have to necessarily know about. But some very good, talented people asked me not to do it. I opened it up, and then they said, "Would it be possible for us to do that a different day?"
How much of it did you read into?
I think it's going to be just fine to open it. Let me put it that way. I think it's fine. It's going to be time. It's a cleansing. It's really a cleansing. So I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it immediately, almost immediately upon entering office.
Well, the thing, when people look at it from the outside, and you sort of imagine what could be a reason why they would not release those files, it would be there's people that were implicated in the assassination.
Yeah. Well, when they're living people, you generally tend not to want to do it. When people are still living.
Living people that formerly worked for the government.
For the government, and living people that were somehow involved in it, and you tend not to do that. But it's time to open them. I can't tell you whether or not I can find anything of interest. And I did partially open. I think I've opened 50%, but I was asked not to do it, and I I thought that was a reasonable ask, but now I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it very soon. There's a lot of interest in it.
One of the things that
There's
I'm
a lot of interest in the people coming from space, you know.
Yes.
And I know you're interested
Oh,
in
I'm very interested in that. How much did they tell you about that?
a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
What did they tell you? How much can you tell?
So
How's that work? Is it like super
I think
top
I can
secret?
tell, you know.
Tell me.
Well, based on Hunter Biden, I can say whatever the hell I
Yes.
want, right? But no. But I interviewed a few people. It's never been my thing, I have to be honest. I have never been a believer. I have people that Area 51 or whatever it is, I think it's the #1 tourist attraction in the whole country or something. Area 51 in Las Vegas. Do you know that, right?
Sure, I know what it is.
So anyway, but it's a big tourist thing. So I interviewed jet pilots that say they saw something. If you saw them, you'd love to have them.
I've had a couple in here. Commander David Fravor,
Yeah.
I had him in, who had that sighting in 2004. Very, very compelling with video
compelling.
evidence, radar evidence.
Ryan
Graves.
I don't believe his name, but I interviewed jet pilots that
2 copies.
were solid
All
people.
damage poisons.
Perfect. I mean, great pilots, great everything. And they said, we saw things, sir, that were very strange. Like a round ball, but it wasn't a comet or a meteor. It was something. And it was going 4 times faster than an F-22, which is a very fast plane, you know. And it was round, which is in theory great shape.
So when you were talking to these people, was this something that you were compelled to have conversations
No.
about? Was this your personal interest?
A little bit. It's not a great interest for me, but it's a little interest. I get that question as much as almost any question. Do you think that we have aliens coming, you know, flying around or whatever?
What do you think?
There's no reason not to. I mean, there's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life, you know, because
Well, Mars, we've had probes there and
Well,
rovers,
yeah,
and I don't think there's any life there.
Or maybe it's life that we don't know. But maybe
Well,
it's
maybe
a
there was
different
life there at one point in time. This is the speculation about Mars, that Mars had an atmosphere at one point in time, a long time ago, that could support life. It also had large bodies of water, but we've had no evidence of even bacterial life that exists on Mars. But the
It's
universe
not
is
been a
pretty
big
vast.
thing for me. I mean, when I looked at what China did to this, they would have never done it with me, where they put the balloon up. And a lot of people thought for a little while that was
Right.
one of these things. So,
Well, that's
you
a
know,
lot of the speculation, too, that some of these drones that hover over battleships, that these are Chinese drones, and that they're not UFOs.
They could be also.
There's some super
But I
sophisticated.
did interview, let's say 3 or 4 guys that, and without tremendous interest, if you had them, as I said, you'd love to have them as your children. Solid, beautiful people. They said, sir, there's something there. You know,
There's
they
something
said
there.
that, yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to quite a few of
They're
them.
not conspiracy guys.
Well, I mean, just the Commander David Fravor thing in 2004 off the coast of San Diego, they clocked that thing going
Yeah.
from 50,000 feet above sea level to 50 in a second.
Yeah.
They don't know what it is.
That's tough to beat.
Yeah, they saw something in the water. It was hovering over that something that was making a disturbance in the water. They got video evidence of this thing. 2 different fighter jets with pilots in them saw it. There's, visual evidence, photographic evidence, video evidence, radar evidence, whatever the hell it is. It moves in a way that would turn a human being into jello if you're inside of it. The G-force, no one would survive.
Oh,
It's like, what is that? And it doesn't have a heat signature. They don't know what their propulsion system was. But,
When you fly in some of these jets, these pilots have to be in great shape.
oh yeah, I flew with the
you-
Blue Angels once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as
I
an
got to
example.
fly. I guess
and
it's
those
an
are older,
F-18.
and those are older machines.
And they're crazy.
When you fly in some of these things,
Oh my
it's
God!
amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You got to be special.
But these things that these people are encountering are far superior to what we know of.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there's some military or government program that you weren't, that they didn't tell you about?
I think I had a great relationship with the military, basically, but I didn't like certain people. I would have gotten them out if I thought if the election was different, I would have fired all of them quickly. Most of them I did fire. Biden should have fired every military person involved with Afghanistan. He should have had a lot of firings. If you look at him, he told Israel not to do anything, and at least Israel's not going to look at a bomb the way they would have been. Think if they listened to Biden. They'd be waiting for a bomb to drop on their head right now. He's been wrong about so much. I guess you'd have to say that she's been wrong too, because she always said they made the decision together. But Israel didn't follow his advice, and I think it was a very, the Middle East is rapidly changing. There are prophets that say the world will come to an end in the Middle East. You know that, right? And we have weapons today that are so scary. When you look, I rebuilt them all. And when you look at the weapons we have today, the biggest threat we have in the world today is nuclear weapons. And we have other weapons too that are devastating. But the nuclear weapons, the biggest threat we have in the world today, and that's what I was talking about de-escalation with both China and Russia. I'm telling you, we were going to de-escalate. They were going to de-escalate. Got to be careful. It's a little tricky playing with them because they say we're going to do it and they don't do it maybe. But they understood the curse too. It's a curse. China's way behind us, but they'll catch us within 5 years.
So let's imagine, let's say you win in November. What do you do differently, and how do you change this course that it seems we are on for World War III? How do you get us out of Ukraine? How do you stop what's going on in the Middle East? How do you put a stop to this?
Well, it's a very, to me, it's an easy question because I think I can do it easily, but it's a complex question in the sense that the times change, every day changes. Who's winning, who's not winning? I mean, Russia's a war machine. Whether you like it or not, it just grinds along. You speak to people like Viktor Orban, he'll tell you, it's just a big, fat war machine, and that's what's happening. You look at what's happened to Ukraine. If I were there, it would have never happened.
But what could you do now? If you get into office in January, what could you do now?
Right now, you would get both of them. I know both very well. And again, I do not want to tell you, for the purpose of looking smart to 5 people that, that say, oh, he was great. Because if I told you exactly what I do, I could never make a deal. All I can tell you is that I would meet with Putin and I would meet with him, and I know exactly what I'd say to each one of them. And I believe that as president-elect, I would get that war stopped, and stopped fast. We have tremendous power in the United States if you know how to use the power. I stopped other wars just by the use of tariffs. I got Macron of France. Good guy's like a friend of mine, but he's a wise guy. And he's a person that likes France, and he was going to tax our companies. I sent all the smartest guys. I sent Mnuchin, they all failed me. And I said, I'll do it myself. And I called him, I said, Emmanuel, you're taxing American companies. We're not going to allow you to do that. Oh, Donald, I cannot do it. Nothing I can do. It's already been passed. I said, Emmanuel, if you do that, I'm going to put 100% tariff on your wines and champagne that come into the United States, and you're going to regret that you ever did it. He said, Donald, please, that's not fair. Anyway, within about 2 minutes, he dropped the whole thing, and it was massive amounts of money against American companies. I have to protect American companies.
So why doesn't the Biden administration do this?
Because they're incompetent. They don't know how to talk. Look, they met in Alaska with the Chinese, and the Chinese lectured them about how badly we treat people, right? Okay? I mean, think of it. You remember that? It was like they didn't talk to me that way. They respected me. They respected our country. They don't respect our country. They don't respect Biden. They don't respect her. They're dreaming about her because she's incompetent. She's not a smart person. Look, she can't put 2 sentences together. She talks. I watched her 2 nights. I watched her last night, too. It was the same thing. She's not a smart person. These guys are very smart, and they're very streetwise, and they're very tricky and evil and dangerous. And if she becomes the president of the United States, which I can't believe can happen, I don't think this country is going to make it. I don't think we'll ever be. I think just really bad things will happen to our country. And you know what? I look at the outside forces and I say they can all be handled because we have a pot of gold. But we're not going to have that pot of gold to play with anymore. It's a great negotiating thing. I told you, I knocked out this massive car company, going to take all of our car business from Detroit. I knocked it out just by my rhetoric. Rhetorically, I said, they'll never sell a car in here. I'll put tariffs. I don't care. They're 2,000%. They're never going to build that plant.
Is it possible to apply that same thing to the electronics that we use? One of the things that disturbs me greatly is that all of our phones are made overseas, and then some of our phones are made in places like and the chips, and some of our phones are made in places like Foxconn, where they have nets around the building to keep people from jumping off the roof because they have so many suicides. Like, wouldn't it be better to have an American-made iPhone where people are paid good wages, they have health insurance, they're taken care of, they can live a good life, where you're not buying a piece of electronics that's cheaper because someone has to suffer in a horrible way that's not even legal in the United States. It's not even legal to have them work that way in the United States, so they get these people to build them overseas.
You do it, but let me just say, that chip deal is so bad. We put up billions of dollars for rich companies to come in and borrow the money and build chip companies here, and they're not going to give us the good companies anyway. All you had to do was charge them tariffs. If you would have put a tariff on the chips coming in, you would have been able to, just like the auto companies, no different. More sophisticated, but no different. Taiwan, they stole our chip business, okay? They want us to protect them. They want protection. They don't pay us money for the protection, The mob makes you pay money, right? But with these countries that we protect, I got hundreds of billions of dollars from NATO countries that were never paying us. And my biggest fan is Stoltenberg. He just left as the director general, as the secretary general. A good guy. He said, Bush came, he made a speech. Obama came, he made a speech. Trump came, he said, you guys aren't paying, you got to pay. And they said, will you protect us from Russia if we don't? I said, no, you got to pay if you don't pay. Billions of dollars came in to NATO. When I see us paying a lot of money to have people build chips, that's not the way. You didn't have to put up 10 cents. You could have done it with a series of tariffs. In other words, you tariff it so high that they will come and build their chip companies for nothing. In other words, Joe, you put a big tariff on the chips coming in. I said, you don't have to pay the tariff. All you have to do is build your plant in the United States. We didn't have to give them the money to build a plant. Besides that, they're very rich companies, these chip companies. They stole 95% of our business. It's in Taiwan right now. They do a great job, but that's only because we have stupid politicians. We lost the chip business. And now we think we're going to pay. You can't build it that way. You have to make them spend their money in the United States, and those plants would open up all over, and they'll fund them. We don't have to put up 10 cents. And I am in the process of making a huge speech in about a little while. And you and I, how long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got to make a speech. But we'll do it again. I want to do it again with you. Okay. You are something. I said, how long will this last? Anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4
How long we do, Jimmy? 3 hours.
Yeah, good. Well, we'll do it again. I thought it was great. I think it was great as well. You are a fascinating guy, and you've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. It's been an honor.
It's been an honor to have you on as well.
I'm going to make a great speech, and I'm going to say, and if I'm a little off tonight, I'm going to blame you. I spoke to this guy for 3 hours. Anyway, it's a great honor to be.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
So much. There's so much to unpack here. Starting off with, because of his knowledge about business and entertainment, it actually demonstrates that Trump has a better understanding of how the actual level works, and it now makes more sense why he went in with the business money strategy he had. He wanted to use that knowledge to be able to make better entertainment deals, which, even though I don't like it, it puts into light his context of sports washing. in his viewpoint, namely speaking on what he said about Dana White and the UFC, he wants to do business to be able to make deals that benefit America, the same way that the Telugu company benefiting off of, finally, understandable, the Telugu company benefiting off the fact that they could sell a license on their company domain name for the country, the TV status, TV, AI, they use that for prosperity purposes rather than just, we don't care about sports, sports are fucking ridiculous. What me care about who wins, I just care about my bets getting placed. He has a respect, at least for the physicality of sports. And he knows enough about the history of the game and the history of the profession to be able to speak on it the same way any person that does boxing in New York City can speak on a boxer. I think this is the most important part and the most important deal that colors all of his decisions. Because he just makes deals. He makes deals. Which we should all know from how he's made deals before, but he just makes deals. That's all he does. He cuts a deal. He has a disagreement, let's make a deal. He wants to do some business, let's make a deal. He wants to try to get some help on a problem that other people might not be able to solve, let's make a deal. Just let's make a deal, over and over again. Just let's make a deal, let's make a deal, let's make a deal. He's also not flighting conversations, as he's been described as, according to media sources. Personally, I'm not fully taken in by it, and it being the charm of the personality, but it puts more things about his personality in perspective. At the very least, he's able to sit down and do an interview. Not something we can really say about Kamala. If anything, I think this interview comes at a time where it couldn't have been better planned. There's very few ways that this goes poorly for him. That alone is probably the best that you could possibly get, both in perspective and outcome.
After a bit of ancient treasure.
At least in my opinion. Because who's to say that he's hypocritical, or that I can't do an interview, or I can't be able to yap with the best of them. Shit like that. But that is over, which means the stream will end. Because today is Sunday, which means it is my day off. If I go live later, it'll probably be doing another big loud. I apologize that I couldn't be able to do a stream for Liberty Day. I had a head-poundingly bad migraine, which has only subsided because of the lovely work of my beautiful, beautiful wife. So I'm going to try to chill. I will see you all soon.